Hanson, would you make an introduction, please?
Yes, I'd be happy to, and welcome, council. So today we have Dr. Greg DeCinque. He is president of TCC, and that's all the campuses here in Hampton Roads, as well as Dr. Michael Summers, who is our provost here in Virginia Beach, to provide an update on what the college is doing. And so we are having a download issue, and we should have the slides up shortly. But sir, I'll turn it back to you for a special proclamation.
Oh, thank you, and this is a very special proclamation. Tidewater Community College has been a vibrant part of our community for 50 years now. And you're part of our economic engine. You are part of the people that live here. So many Virginia Beach students take advantage of the opportunities that you afford. And I think I speak on behalf of the council and a very grateful Virginia Beach that we have a lot of pride in your presence in our community. So as with this honor, I read a proclamation. Whereas for the past 50 years, Tidewater College has served the citizens of Southampton Roads by providing affordable higher education, workforce development, and economic development. Whereas the Virginia Beach campus of Tidewater Community College, which opened in 1973, has been instrumental in the development of the city of Virginia Beach, providing citizens with employment, education, cultural opportunities, as well as helping to initiate development of Southern Virginia Beach. Whereas the Virginia Beach campus of TCC is TCC's largest campus with some 18,000 students. And whereas the Virginia Beach campus features the signature programs of engineering technology, maritime, health professions, information technology, funeral service, and hospitality. And whereas the Virginia Beach campus has joined the City of Virginia Beach to build and manage the Advanced Technology Center and the Joint Use Library. Whereas the Virginia Beach campus includes regional health profession centers, which feature state-of-the-art simulation labs, and the science building, which contains the planetarium. And whereas the Virginia Beach campus houses the Center for Military and Veterans Education, a unique resource for military-related students. Therefore, I, Robert M. Dyer, Mayor of the City of Virginia Beach, do hereby proclaim February 19th, 2019, 50th anniversary of Tidewater Community College.
Thank you very much.
I'm the camera crew too.
Okay. Another shameless photo op for the minute.
Everything was done.
Come on, Mike.
I just told you left.
It was on FaceTime and everybody can see it.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Aaron, you forgot to get in there.
I know. I was making sure the back of my head wasn't in there. So what is this huge spot in this place?
I know you're in photography today.
Oh, yeah, we're
Yes, they have PowerPoints, and we're going to try and bring
ready
it
to
up
roll.
shortly.
Thank you, Mayor Dyer. Thank you. And I would like to also thank you. I am Cindy Free, your current representative for Virginia Beach, along with Delcino Miles and Dr. Barry Brown, were your 3 appointees for the Tidewater Community College Board representing Virginia Beach. I'm proud to serve on the committee now for this is my 4th year, coming up on my 2nd term. And I would like to introduce our president, Dr. DeCinque. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that proclamation. As you know, 50 years is a long time in some ways, but what's amazing to me is the American Community College itself has really only been around for about 65 years. And in a short 65 years, the American Community College now represents almost 50% of all students who begin a path to undergraduate education. So we're really very proud of what the community colleges have done. We're also very thrilled with the kind of support we've received from the Virginia Beach community. I've only been here about 7 months, and I'm actually interim, and I'll be here a little while longer, and I'm going to miss it when I'm gone. This is a wonderful community. It's a wonderful college, and it just had so much impact on Southern Hampton Roads. We are very, very proud of the cooperative and collaborative programs that we've been able to do with the city of Virginia Beach. That's quite amazing. The first time that Provost Summers took me around the campus, my ending thought was, next time get me a golf cart. Because it is a long walk around that campus if you've ever tried it. Just walking through that joint use library alone, which may be one of the most fantastic libraries in the country. It is just really spectacular. That's a tribute to the kind of partnership that we have with the city. I thought what I would do today, and then Provost Summers will come up, and I know you all know his long history here and part of building this campus along with all of you. And but I thought I'd tell you a little bit about TCC. In the 7 months I've been here, I found that sometimes people don't really understand just the magnitude of this institution. I came out of the State University of New York system with 64 institutions and some good-sized colleges, but none of the community colleges anywhere near the size and the impact, frankly, of Tidewater Community College. If you're not aware, Tidewater Community College currently has 32,000 credit students, another 10,000 students taking workforce development and some kind of workforce programs. And I have to say also that is really an area of growth. There's been some talk about we've had a decline in the credit enrollment, but to some extent what we're also seeing is a shift in enrollment to more direct programs in workforce. Not that the transfer and the credit programs are ever going to go away. That's an integral part of what we do. But the push on workforce today is very significant. And in response to that, we just opened a Skilled Trades Academy in Portsmouth. And that Skilled Trades Academy is in partnership with the Huntington Ingalls and a number of businesses where we're preparing people for the shipbuilding industry, carpentry, plumbing, electrical work, all of those things that we all now say, if I could just get a good plumber. And for a long time, I think, unfortunately, these are just some pictures of the early days of the campus, but unfortunately, over the last 30 years, we've really not paid enough attention to those kind of skilled trades jobs. We certainly have paid a lot of attention to getting individuals through for bachelor's degrees and master's degrees and those things, so that's very good. But today there is a really high demand for these other fields. You may not realize, but TCC is truly the college of choice for Hampton Roads. We get by far the most graduates of high schools, not even counting the adults, of any college in the area. That comes out to about 1 in 5 of every high school graduate will attend TCC. And that doesn't count those, anybody here ever do a degree somewhere else and then take a course at TCC? That's usually a very common thing. So we have lots of students like that as well. I think the last thing that I wanted to share with you is that we are celebrating 50 years, as you know. We will be hosting a gathering that we'll send you invitations to for a picnic to celebrate 50 years of the success of Tidewater Community College. So let me conclude by just simply saying that I'm very proud to be part of TCC, even if for a short while. And I look forward to continuing our work and collaboration. And now I'd like to turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Dr. Michael Summers, who has done just a remarkable job here at the Virginia Beach campus.
Thank you, Chief. We really have welcomed Dr. DeSinke with open arms, and it's nice to, it's kind of different having a New Yorker right in our cabinet, but he has adjusted well.
I got to correct it. I'm a Southerner. My hometown is in Cape May, New Jersey.
There's something that has a ring to that.
Southern Jersey. Thank you.
Okay, I want to share 5 things about the campus that we're really proud of that have changed the campus and just the, all right, I hit the wrong button, didn't I?
You're back. You're back.
My back. The Honor Foundation. We started this in 2016. This is the only foundation of its kind that focuses on transitioning special operation forces and Navy SEALs to civilian life. There are a lot of transition programs for military personnel. There's never been anything like the Honor Foundation. It was started on the West Coast in San Diego in 2014. Virginia Beach campus became the East Coast operation. And what you see right here is a picture of the 6th graduating class at Virginia Beach. And some neat things about these, which I call American heroes. We have graduated 118 of these men and women in the Honor Foundation program on the Virginia Beach campus. The results are that 97% of these men and women are employed, in college, or self-employed within 90 days of transitioning out of the military. Their average salary is $121,000 a year. And our vision from the very beginning is, how do we keep these national heroes employed locally in Virginia Beach? And we're really proud to have this service. And what you see there is a mixture of their staff, a few board members, and the Admiral is right in the center there, who is the guest speaker. Really proud of that program. We offer 2 classes a year, a class of about 30 students. They spend about 3 months going to seminars in the evenings, and then they have a grand graduation. So that's point number 1. Number 2, back in 2009, we saw a compelling need for a lot of our students didn't have access to computer hardware. We started what's called a computer club, and as of today, that club has given away more than 11,000 computers to students. Not only do we give away to students, we also have given away hardware and support services to 375 projects within the city. Of note, recently, the Beach House and the Judeo-Christian Outreach Center are some of the agencies that get free computers. What's beautiful about this is the students going through the IT programs get firsthand knowledge on how to repair, recondition these computers, and then install them in the locations. And it continues to be a major point of success for the campus. And we not only give the computers to Virginia Beach students, but they're given to Norfolk, Portsmouth, and Chesapeake students also. Number 3, for the first time in 30 years in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we started a new veterinary program at TCC Virginia Beach campus. Isn't that amazing? For 30 years, there hasn't been a new program. A year ago, we got our veterinary assisting program credentialed and certified. Now we're starting veterinary technology. It really grew out of area veterinarians who did not have enough workers, and they came to the college and said, help us do this. And so we're really proud that we're on the map for the first time in 30 years to start a veterinary tech program. Number 4, for 20 years, a not-for-profit organization called the Institute for Learning and Retirement has worked out of the Higher Ed Center. Well, John Broderick is finally going to expand programming in health sciences at the Virginia Beach Higher Ed Center. So these folks are losing their home. So they came talking to me. Of course, I'm just right next door. I thought it was a wonderful opportunity to have 1,000 retirees attending workshops on a regular basis at the Virginia Beach campus. And guess what else? They're going to give the TCC campus several $1,000s every year in scholarships for our students. So starting April 1st, I'm going to have 1,000 new grandmas and grandpas walking around the campus. You know what I'm thinking? They got grandkids, they got daughters and sons, and to me, this is one of the best marketing programs we can offer. And it was amazing. All the years they've been going to the Higher Ed Center, they never took the walk over to the Virginia Beach campus. So we are welcoming them with open arms. They open up a 2- or 3-person office in my building where the administration is on March 1st, and they start their first workshops in April. Really proud of having them there. And number 5, let it be said that the Virginia Beach campus of TCC has permanent offices for the University of Virginia. You know, for the last 5 or 6 years, University of Virginia had offices up in Newport News, and I know it's not tech. We're working on them, okay? We're working on them. They had they had offices up in a bank building up in Newport News, and they just didn't get the foot traffic. And so they talked to me, and I said, you ought to be in the largest city in the Commonwealth. And so we negotiated a lease with them. They've got staff in their School of Continuing and Professional Studies. who will work with students who are interested in bachelor's and master degree programs online, plus help our students that transition into their BIS program at the Virginia Beach campus. So those are 5 quick things that I wanted to share with you about the campus. We're really proud of what's happening out there, and I'd entertain any questions.
Any questions or comments? But once again, kudos to you and your ongoing mission, and we look forward to a continuing and wonderful relationship.
Awesome.
We thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
for your support.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right,
Thanks, Frank.
all right.
Hey, Mr. Hanson, given Jessica Abbott is caught in traffic, maybe we should just, hold on to, the food truck discussion and move to the
course,
next
sir.
item on the agenda.
Absolutely. And so I've got my SGA team out there, and hopefully there she is, Miss Kathy Warren, our SGA administrator. And so she's going to present today.
She left.
She left.
What she
There she is. It's all good. And so we're going to talk a little bit about opportunities. There's been some discussion about, what are they and what's the timelines associated with it. And so asked her and planning department to put something together. And so Kathy, take it away.
Okay, good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. I'd like to first introduce Jenny Connors with Williams Mullen, who will be presenting with me today. And a special thank you today to our team who's been working on the opportunity zones, Ron Berkebile, David Couch with Economic Development, and Steve Harrison with Economic Development as well. So a quick overview of our presentation today. I'll walk you through the background, Virginia Beach's opportunity zones, and how we market them. Taylor will also be adding to that as well when we get to that slide. And then some examples of opportunities within our zones before I pass it to Jenny, who will get into the nuts and bolts of the program and what we can do as a city to attract these investments. The Opportunity Zone program was established as part of the Federal Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017. The goal of the program is to attract investment into distressed areas of the community by providing investors with deferrals or exclusions of capital gains taxes. And unlike other incentive programs out there, opportunity zones are not capped. In early 2018, governors were permitted to choose up to 25% of their qualified census tracts to be designated as opportunity zones. These census tracts are eligible if they have a higher than 20% poverty rate or their area median income is below 80% of the area median income. Virginia now has 210 opportunity zones, and 8 of those are in the city of Virginia Beach. With respect to regulations for the program, proposed regulations have been out for several months, and we are expecting the final regulations to be issued. I know this says the end of the month, but likely it'll be March. Here are our 8 opportunity zones. These zones meet the criteria for poverty rate and/or area median income, and many have shovel-ready sites. All but one, Corporate Landing, have at least a portion in a strategic growth area. Here's the map showing the qualified census tracts that are opportunity zones. Burton Station is up on the left. Central Village District and Bonnie Road area in the central area of the city. Lynn Haven, Hilltop, Corporate Landing, and SeaTac clustered around Oceana.
Just a question before we move off. Does the one that's the central village, is that qualifying because it's adjacent to an area, or does it qualify in and of itself?
It qualifies in and of itself.
Can I get the detailed demographics on that one?
Sure.
Thank you.
Dennis Mahaven.
So what is the city's role for this program? I think it's important to note before Taylor speaks on this, our main role was to ensure that we get the full 25% of our qualified census tracts designated, and we did that. Now we need to be promoting the program, and unlike other incentive programs, we do not play a role in the transaction. This incentive does not flow through us. That is strictly with the investor.
Thanks, Kathy. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. I'm going to give a just quick overview of how we're utilizing the new things that we're learning every day about the opportunity zones and our marketing efforts here. The first thing that we want to mention, without going into a lot of detail, is just to know that there is a website that is live and functioning, embedded on the economic development page, with a lot of great information on there. Most specifically, that map is interactive, can be zoomed in to focus on specific sites. There's also links to the tax codes, without stealing any of Jenny's thunder, but there are links to the sections of the tax code that are implicated here, and then a nice and just a wealth of other information that can be utilized for businesses in the area. As it relates to oh, there we go. How we're utilizing the zones. The big thing, and I will tell you, we've been working these zones actively for a couple of months now, and I learned from Jenny's presentation this morning, before we came down here to see you all, that we added 3 new sectors to the list where we'll actually be tracking going forward. So this is very much still a developing area of focus for us, as the final tax code on this has not yet been adopted. We so far, what we are seeing from an interest standpoint, primarily in our office, relates to professional office uses that are either existing or proposed within commercial corridors already in a zone. Why is that? We are seeing a lot of interest around the fact that you don't necessarily have to own the real estate to participate in the zone. Just have control of it or be a tenant in certain parts of it and be improving it. A lot of information in there, but just this is something that is a new area of focus for us. We're very interested in where it can take us. We believe that the benefit, particularly in the zones that are already around our existing commercial corridors, from the activity we've already seen, are going to bring a lot of benefit to us on the business attraction side in the coming months and years. We're just waiting to see the code adopted. The last thing that I'll mention is that tomorrow at Zyder's American Dream Theater at 5:30, there's an open house for any member of the public who's interested in learning more about these. There's a link there where someone can go to view the agenda and register for the event. We're anticipating a large turnout and are looking forward to getting more information out on the zones.
Oops. Okay, sorry about that. And just wanted to go through a couple of quick examples of where our opportunities are. The Central Village District, which has already been mentioned, we continue to promote this area for redevelopment. The Central Village District is within the Pembroke SGA, and it'll soon be home to Wegmans. It's now seeing a lot of development opportunities in the form of affordable apartment communities such as Price Street, and we know other developers are looking at properties in this area.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
There's very little residential in that area. There's that trailer park and all that. That's why I was asking about, there's Pocahontas Village, I think, that kind of stuff, but that's not a heavily residential area.
No, but we do have Price Street, which is the new affordable housing community that's under construction right now.
But it's not open and occupied by people earning income, is it?
Not yet.
Okay, thank you.
And then there's Cleveland Street, which is about to undergo a transformation that will help shape this area as a more pedestrian-friendly, connected community ripe for redevelopment. And then, of course, there's Burton Station. A great deal of interest is showing here from the private sector to capitalize on adjacent development and public investment of new roads, a fire station, a pump station, which will support new mixed-use development of residential, commercial, and light industrial. These are just some of the examples of what our city has to offer in these opportunity zones. Jen?
Good afternoon. As Kathy mentioned, I'm Jenny Connors. I'm a partner in the tax section at Williams Mullen, and I head our Opportunity Zone group. And also, as Kathy mentioned, I'm going to go through the nuts and bolts of the program and its incentives. And I can tell you that we get so many calls on this program because the incentives are not only very good for investors, but Virginia's zones that they designated are so incredible. And what the incentive has to offer, what the program has to offer for investors is largely three-pronged. It's this concept of if you are an investor who has eligible capital gains, you can invest those gains into an opportunity zone fund and get deferral of those gains for a certain period. You can also get an element of tax forgiveness depending on how long you hold your investment in the fund. And the real crux of the statute is this third prong, is this tax-free appreciation on your investment in the fund. And I know we're short on time today or trying to get through this quickly, so I'm actually going to move on to this slide because I think it illustrates an example. So if we have an investor who has, let's use really simplistic numbers, $100 of eligible gain, and that investor invests that $100 today in an opportunity zone fund, so February 19th, 2019, excuse me. If our investor continues to hold until December 31st, 2026, he will get the benefit of 7+ years of deferral, plus a total of 15% of tax forgiveness. So this December 31st, 2026 date is really important because that's the end of the deferral period for investors. So you may have investors who are willing to make opportunity zone investments through that day. And in fact, through June of 2027 through the way that the rules work. But provided that you hold this year, you get the benefit of a 7-year holding period, which gives you tax forgiveness of up to 15%. So in my example, our investor with the $100 gets $100 deferral for 7+ years, and then come December 31st, 2026, he will only pay tax on $85. So if we assume a 20% tax rate, that's paying tax of $17. If our investor continues to hold that investment through at least February 19th, 2029, so 10 years plus, he pays no additional tax on that investment in his opportunity zone fund. So if our investor's $100 investment at that point is now worth $500, our investor pays no additional tax. And on that investment, the only amount that he paid tax was $17 of tax on $500 of gain. And so that works out to an effective tax rate in this example, in this very simple example, of 3.4%. So you can see how that looks very attractive to investors. And because the crux of the statute really comes into play in this tax-free appreciation, in this long-term 10+ year hold, that's why Virginia zones have become so attractive, is because if they are areas that are trending towards economic growth and development, and this acts as a force multiplier, you're looking at investors who see areas that are likely to highly appreciate. So I talked about these opportunity zone funds. Investments have to be made into these funds. It sounds like a very fancy term, but really it's just a tax partnership, so at least 2 people, or a corporation. It has to self-certify with the IRS, so that's all you have to do is you file a form with the IRS saying that you're going to be an opportunity zone fund. Excuse me. But more importantly, the more stringent test that you have to meet is that 90% of your assets have to be held in opportunity zone property. An opportunity zone property is a really complex concept that requires a lot of careful planning because there are some compliance aspects to it. But generally, at its core, it has 3 requirements. It's requiring that if a business is going to take advantage of this incentive, it has to actually do something within a zone. It has to operate a trade or business within a zone, and it has to do so actively. If it has existing property, it needs to move that property into a zone. So that property needs to all of a sudden become part of the generation of economic growth and development within that zone. And the third requirement is if they buy property that's already within a zone, you have to do something to it. You have to substantially improve it. So if it's vacant land, you need to build something. If it's an old rundown property, you need to substantially improve it. And so that's the concept of the incentive and the program, is it's very place-based, meaning opportunity zone-based, and property-centric. So it's bringing property and improving property in opportunity zones to help drive economic growth and development, drive jobs, tax revenue, things of that nature within opportunity zones. So who are the optimal users and what are the optimal uses of this program and the incentives? As you can see, commercial real estate developments, mixed use, multifamily housing, those are great uses that work very well within the incentive and have an easier time complying. New businesses opening in opportunity zones. Earlier today I heard someone speak from 757 Accelerate. So incubators, I mean, startup companies that are coming out of these incubators are perfect for the opportunity zones. And Kathy and I were talking earlier that you can actually double dip on these zones because the building that you build in the zone can qualify and the business that moves in as a tenant in that building can qualify. So there's multiple opportunities to stack opportunities within the zones. Existing businesses can move their property into an opportunity zone. So maybe they don't have a building, maybe they're leasing space and they can move within a zone and be the original user of that property within the zone. Or if you have a business that's looking for exponential growth, they can grow that business within the zone. Some of the unique businesses that we're seeing are solar farms. We just did a grocery store in Richmond that serves a food desert in a low-income community. Hotels are a big user of this. Starwood Hotel Line just started their own opportunity zone division. Health clinics, warehousing and distribution facilities with the access to the ports, that's becoming even more important. So these are just some of the ideas that you could use within this incentive. It is intended to be flexible and very wide-reaching and usable by a lot of businesses, innovators, developers, and it's another tool in their toolbox for raising equity. So what do local initiatives look like? I think this incentive, as I mentioned, is supposed to be a force multiplier. It is supposed to fit within your strategic plan, within your strategic growth areas. It is intended to assist in existing efforts that are already underway. If you have investment-ready projects, identify those projects for investors, market them. If you don't have projects that are investment ready, do all that you can to get them investment ready because there are timelines for compliance. So investors and business owners and developers are going to be looking for projects that they can finish quickly. And finally, I would say strategically market these opportunities. Find business owners and developers who have public interests in mind and can, again, help with the strategic plan for the city of Virginia Beach. And that's all. If there are any questions.
I have a question.
Okay.
How does these opportunity zones affect low-income communities? Is that a way for an investor to come in and say, hey, I want to invest in these low-income communities, redo them, and then jack the rent up and the people can no longer afford them?
And this is one of the big topics that came up with some of the other projects that are going on around the country is this concept of, again, fitting this incentive within your strategic plan and being strategic as a locality in understanding what kind of growth and development is going to come into these zones. So I think dedicating certain investments for low-income housing, easing permitting for daycare centers. I think there are ways to make the incentive work so that you're getting the infusion of private capital. You're getting the benefit of that creates jobs in the community, but doesn't necessarily push residents out of the community. It more serves them. But again, it's all about being strategic in the planning around the zones and understanding what's about to come into those zones.
And what is the city doing in terms of attracting? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, folks, if we can just be recognized by the chair so we can go into a fair order. John, did you have something?
I had two questions. One, was the price development an opportunity zone itself? So the price development qualified the area to be an opportunity zone, because before that we had just a trailer park. So we actually used another program to create an opportunity qualifying area, correct?
So the Opportunity Zones was not a trailer park. It's a former light industrial site.
I think you're missing my question.
Okay, sorry.
If before we had the Price's apartment development, that was industrial, correct? I'm
Correct.
saying the number of people in that district, the residential property, and the number of residents was very few.
Correct.
And so I was asking the question is it the development of the Price's apartment that gave us the qualification to designate the census tract as an opportunity zone? That was my question.
No, it did not.
Well, can I have the details of how it did without it? That'd be great.
Absolutely.
And the other thing I would suggest, since I went to the site and looked to their actual site, it'd be really good to use the exact exhibits that they have on the interactive site that shows the return on investments of a programmatic hypothetical $1 million. It walks that through quite graphically and shows each individual pieces, and I think it's much more informative to an investor than the line chart that we had. This is a very good example, and we just probably ought to just, imitate it and just use it.
Thank you.
Hey, David.
I apologize for getting too excited about it. What exactly is the city doing in terms of attracting some of these investments? Do we have a strategic plan? Is that kind of built in?
Okay,
She
so,
mentioned permitting, things like that.
and I think Taylor will hit on this a little more closely, but if I can make one comment, tomorrow we are holding our first open house panel, and we have 4 panelists that are coming in from tax attorneys to CPAs. We have over 100 plus RSVPs of the private sector, investors, developers, builders that'll be coming in to hear all about the program and the specific details, as Mr. Moss was suggesting.
Thank you for the question, Councilman. So it's important to note the tax code related to opportunity zones and opportunity zone funds has not yet been finalized. And so we're talking with 3 different developers right now who we feel like will participate. We know of some folks in Richmond that are actively setting up opportunity zone funds right now, but really our opportunity here will start as soon as the tax code is finalized and we see what those final regulations look like. Like Kathy mentioned earlier in the presentation, as this is really as this relates to federal taxes, our work here was basically to identify the census tracts, get them in. I think it was, you said how many from the nation? It was 20. How many were submitted nationwide or Commonwealth-wide? 210 in the Commonwealth. 8 of them are here, and so that's really all the city can do at this point until the code is adopted. Once the code is adopted, we'll be able to do a lot more active marketing and probably provide more resources in setting up funds specifically here in our jurisdiction.
Mr. Hess.
So let's talk about a timeline here, because there is a sense of urgency if the timeline that I understand this program has continues. So
Yes,
could you please inform the council before I continue?
So that's right. So this was part of this program came about as through the new Tax Relief Act 2017 and was set to sunset in 2026. We are hoping that in the final regulations that there is some extension of that to allow for the fact that we're almost 2 years in or a year past that, but that tax relief sort of taking effect. But that is the sense of urgency for us as it relates to the 5, 7, and then 10-year window. We need to understand what the time horizons we're working with are.
Are there dates or are there thresholds for initiation? Are there requirements to initiate a project in a certain timeline in order to qualify?
Yes, there are several.
So would you please address those?
Yes, sir. So an investor with eligible gain generally has 180 days to invest that eligible gain into an opportunity zone fund and elect deferral. So generally speaking, you have 6 months to invest your gain. Once that money is into an opportunity zone fund, how much time you have to deploy it depends on the structure, and that's why I say there are some complexities to this. But generally within 6 months, that's your first testing window to see if you meet the test. Projects that are building things, there is a safe harbor of 31 months for you to take in capital and deploy that capital towards a project. But even 31 months on a timeline can be tight depending on the project. And that's why there can be any push towards pre-development activities is beneficial, especially when there's something being built, when it's brick and mortar based.
So what I'm driving at, members of council, is I think that the federal government is late in giving the specifics to the investment community of when they have to invest their money and what their timeline to deploy their capital into actual projects. It's been out there now for a while, for almost a year, and the designation came when? Almost a year ago, right? Of our April a year ago. And I am operating under the belief that the threshold to initiate your project had to happen before the end of this current calendar year, 2019. Please correct me.
So if you look at this window, because you're tied into this 7-year holding period to get the full 15% basis increase, we call this the window of optimization, because you have to invest by December 31st, 2019 to get that 15%. So optimization is by the end of this year. I will say after that, you can still be eligible to get the 10% basis increase if you hold for 5 years before December 31st, 2026.
Perfect, Jenny. And so, just to complete my thought, Mr. Moss, is that okay?
No, I was just waiting to be recognized.
Okay. We have these opportunity zones. They are in the PR phase. They're bringing in, and they have advertised, and they're bringing those folks in to engage us to understand where these zones are, to get an understanding of what available real estate is in there and what our intentions are for land use in those areas. But the speed with which we entice them to make their commitments to us might be better served after we see this conversation with the private community to potentially consider RFPing some of our areas to see what they're willing to give, to put, and to invest in our city. And if we are hesitant, I am concerned that they will take their capital elsewhere, because that 15% that expires on 31 December, if that isn't extended, I think some folks are going to make some decisions in the immediate future about capital gains that they currently possess. And so there is a sense of urgency in this conversation. And I know there were some concerns by various members of council that we're getting out ahead of you, but we really have not committed to anything until we can bring you up to speed about what this program is. And as I said, we don't have all the facts that we thought we would be having, because the legislators and tax authorities have not actually come to grips about how they want to process this program. So in answer to your question, what are we doing about it? We're trying to thread this needle. That's the third term that I use with a couple of y'all, to stay between where the feds are trying to get their line together and this box right here, because this is the optimal use that somebody who's sitting on millions, multi-millions, and needs to turn those over so they don't have to pay capital gains taxes on them, can wait for 7 years, and oh, by the way, only pay 85% on it, as Jenny said, is a great opportunity for them to come here. And we've got some very nice locations, as you saw on your city map, to entice them to invest in our city.
Okay, Louis, John, and then David.
Do I understand that as long as you start the project within that first year, you have 3 years to have capital gains that you can apply towards it? Is that correct?
So the way it works is they have to make their investment into the opportunity fund within 180 days. Okay. So what would typically happen is an investor is going to put all of their cash into an opportunity fund, And then that opportunity fund, depending on how it's structured, has up to 31 months to deploy that capital. So from the investor standpoint, the money is already invested. The business has the 31 months to hold it
Gotta
and
have
utilize
Louis,
it.
to put it
Cash
in, yes,
hand,
sir.
Right, okay. I thought you were saying that you could sell something after you started the project and get into.
No, they're holding the cash right now. That's the sense of urgency that people are faced with across the nation to take advantage of this. And we are competing against all the other opportunity zones that might be available out there.
Okay, John?
I just Googled opportunity fund investor funds just to see what would come up. And one's called Sycar Lux. It's in Florida, and it says it was founded in 2018. It says it's the first and only qualified opportunity fund accepting investors at that point in time. There's like 4 or 5 of them, and they're already raising money. So much like a RIT in some respects, they're already accepting funds and looking at anticipation. So the funds are already out there. And that would probably be good at some point to not only just have this, but to have the people, maybe a financial house or someone in that regard, to give us a education on how the private sector, and I'm sure these are gonna be people like Blackstone and other companies that are hedge funds will be big into this environment, I suspect, or people who normally would put money here to feel how those things are structured. I'm gonna do my own little bit of research to see how they're structured and incorporated and what they do, because that's gonna give you an insight. There may be someone who's a national company of big equity, comes in and sets the stuff up, and they move money from a hedge fund into it to make the investment. I suspect you'll see some of that.
And I can tell you, there are many institutional funds out there. I have set up 4 at this point myself, not institutional, but essentially one-off fund projects. So these are anything from large institutional funds but they are largely looking for big, large-scale projects. Where the money is coming in a lot of times in these localities is from high net wealth investors that either live within the community. We've had a lot of out-of-state interest in our opportunity zones as well. But these are high net wealth investors who are not typically investors in real estate and dirt and tangible property, but because of this opportunity are looking to put their money into funds. So I would say for as many large institutional funds as there are dozens of small local funds that I would say are at the $5 to $20 million range, whereas some of the larger institutional funds are looking for large-scale projects.
David?
In addition to the RFPs that I think were discussed, these areas also have some infrastructure problems. Are we as a city prioritizing the infrastructure, roads, flooding, sewer? How are we looking at those aspects with respect to taking advantage of these opportunities? Because they're coming along, they're looking for ready projects. What are we doing in terms of that? Are we prioritizing that?
We would take any project, we would evaluate, they would have to be compliant with our regulations for stormwater. They would have to construct, their retention, and process a 100-year storm on site. They would also be responsible for code compliance in right-sizing their utilities and tying into our system.
How about the roads?
Every project has a unique set of circumstances that we would look at. We have a healthy repaving program. We have a healthy resurfacing and reconstruction CIP that supports certain road projects. We have a tendency to bring before the council all kinds of infrastructure incentives to assist them in doing that. But I think this is such a extremely tight and very lucrative investment that when you put your property on the street and you say, hey, look, this is the kind of scope we're looking for in this environment, which they're going to be doing to try to direct the type of investment we have in the area, the land use that we would like to see, then I think folks are going to want to come in here and they're going to want to be very rapid in their getting to design, because that 31 months includes design and construction. So they'll probably follow a design build technique. They'll get to somewhere 25-30%, and they'll break ground and they'll keep designing as they come out of the ground. They'll build and they'll design to reduce their wait time to go to construction. we will work with them individually. So in answer to your question, we'll do what's reasonably expected of the city to help them in the infrastructure, but it'll be with the city council's approval.
Okay, any other questions? You know, I think we got to do whatever it takes to bring more business through innovative techniques like this into the city. But the other thing is we got to make sure that our planning department and, you know, everybody is ready to go to help expedite these projects.
So Mayor, I'd like to keep Kathy on the podium because you have a second item. It's called it's a very short one. It's an acquisition, Burton Station. And it just fits in, and it's gonna help you all realize how you as council members have especially the older members, not that being old is bad, the more senior members of the council, how assemblage of properties provide you an opportunity. And so I've asked Kathy to talk about, yes ma'am, to talk about Burton Station. We have an opportunity by being patient when people are willing to sell, that the city is ready to respond by being a willing buyer. And we have two properties that are on your agenda today. And so she's going to explain those real quickly.
Okay, thank you. So just to give a little history on this, the property owner of two small parcels in Burton Station contacted the city to see if we were interested in purchasing their parcels back in 2017. The properties equal 0.18 acres, so they're very small, and they're adjacent to city-owned properties. As part of the Burton Station SGA plan, the city has assembled property to facilitate industrial development in this area. Public Works Real Estate briefed City Council December 5th, 2017 in closed session, and they were given the direction to proceed. The cost for these properties is $16,000. The source of funding is the CIP 9081 SGA projects, and the current zoning and future land use is calling for light industrial. And the red circle shows the area where the two parcels are. You'll see the purple is where the new Tolliver Road is going in and the improved Burton Station Road. Down at the bottom of the screen is the property that's been rezoned to B2 for retail development owned by SL Nussbaum. And the purplish area is all Airport Authority owned light industrial property. Here are the two parcels. The boundaries are in red, and all of the yellow property surrounding is city-owned property. And then this is the updated SGA Burton Station plan, and you'll see in the yellow circle, again, this is the location of these two properties, and the purple is the future land use of light industrial. So we are recommending to acquire these properties to add what the city owns in this area.
Total or
16,000 total.
Did you have any comments on this, Louis, your district?
I think we ought to do it. It's obviously in addition to our ability to assemble or have property available for future development. Every one of these parcels that we have an opportunity to buy, we seriously should consider doing it.
Ms. Henley?
And that's all voluntary. I mean,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
They approached us to sell.
Okay, Shana.
Am I correct, Kathy, if you go back to slide 4, number 4 on ours, right there. So there, the white one there between the red and the yellow is privately owned then still yet, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Kathy, Jenny. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, at this time, if we can go forward with the food trucks, and then upon completion of that discussion, we're going to adjourn for a few minutes and go out to the gallery and get a photo taken.
You were overruled, Aaron.
Aaron.
You look nice. You look gallery.
No, I'm a team player. We take pictures, take pictures.
All right. Here. Just gonna make a face in it.
Mrs. Henley?
No, I wasn't
I
asking.
would be like you. At the retreat, she was clean.
Food truck?
Well, yes, sir. I didn't put a briefer down there. I just thought I'd put it on your agenda and we could have a conversation. But We have a limited agenda item today, an ordinance, and I would defer to the sponsoring council lady.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll start off with what just passed the Senate this afternoon, because that changes a lot of the conversation we're gonna have today. Primarily because I think it changes the trajectory of what we, at least myself and the mayor, set out to accomplish. SB 1425 licensing tax passed the Senate and goes into force July 1, and it basically says that food trucks only have to pay one licensing fee in one locality, presumably the one that they choose, and presumably the one that has the least tax associated with it and the least strings attached, which locally will probably be Chesapeake. But basically, they can do business across the Commonwealth with the same license that they're issued in whatever locality they decide to do business in.
For 2 years, right?
For up to 2 years, and then they, I guess, will reapply for another 2 years. So I would say, I don't think it changes what today's vote is in terms of how we want food trucks to do business in the city. It just changes, I guess, the perspective, because it's gonna be about, do we wanna try to get that revenue here instead of them registering in Chesapeake and still doing business in the city of Virginia Beach? Because they can, for at least the next 2 years, do business throughout the Commonwealth. They just won't be paying us a license tax. So with that said, I think we should still proceed ideally, but I talked to one of the food trucks on my way here while I was in traffic, and they basically said, if Virginia Beach doesn't want to change, then we'll register in another locality, and we'll work on getting the planning part of the ordinance, with you guys and moving forward with that. So, I mean, they're very open to and hopeful that we can reach consensus on the planning part of this. Obviously, that's not what we're talking about today, but with that said, that is where the state has made a decision that they should not have the peddler permit, so to speak, if the locality that they register in doesn't have it.
Okay, Jim?
Well, I think from what the commissioner told me yesterday is that it's just an introductory 2 years, and then after that, they have to register. Well, they're required to register in every locality that they operate. They just don't pay tax except in their home locality. So that's what the commissioner said. But I would tell you that this is an issue that kind of further clouds the whole thing, and that's why I think we really ought to do this as one whole thing, taking a look at the planning items, regulations, and the tax piece all at the same time. And now, especially with this, because that's confusing, I think, to all of us, but that's just my opinion.
Rosemary?
So they would need to pay the fee in March 1st, no matter, because this doesn't go into effect in July.
Yeah, I
is that
mean,
correct?
technically, they would need to pay the fee if they wanted to continue to have a license in Virginia Beach, and then,
If they don't pay it, they have to not operate the asset.
yeah, but
What's the bill number?
it's I have it pulled up, it's 1425 license tax local mobile food units, and it says, provides that when the owner of a mobile food unit defined as a restaurant mounted on wheels and readily movable at any time during its operation pays a license tax in a county or city in which the mobile food unit is registered, it shall pay no other license shall be required in any other locality in the Commonwealth. The exemption from paying the license tax in other localities will expire 2 years after the payment of the initial license tax in the locality in which the mobile food unit is registered. During the 2-year exemption period, the owner may exempt up to 3 mobile food units from license taxation in other localities. Regardless of any license tax exemption, the owner must register with the Commissioner of Revenue or Director of Finance in any locality in which he conducts business. And if you go into the description, I think that's for the purposes of paying BPOL.
Okay, David?
It's not. Oh, I'm sorry, meals tax.
Okay, so, I guess what I understand that ordinance through the state, or I guess the legislation, is that they could have a truck in Danville and come here.
Work in Virginia Beach, yeah.
And then we could not collect meals tax or any other taxes, is that
No, we
my
can,
understanding?
the summary says BPOL on it, but I'm assuming meals tax as well.
So the registration requirements is key to the meals tax,
Okay,
which is location-based. So if I'm registered in Danville for BPOL, I do transactions
Okay.
here, I'm subject to meals tax here. So they'll still be required to collect and remit that meals tax.
Okay, and you'll
But they'll pay their B-pole in the city they're registered in. Got it.
Okay, so they'll have to declare that?
They won't need the peddler's license here.
And what you're basically doing is changing their business license from the $300 fee
So based on their revenue.
the revenue, 20%.
Well, it said had to register, it didn't say had to have a license, it said register.
Now, does that have, when you change that, Mark, this might be your question, a question for you. I heard does it change the background checks and things that they have to do on their employees, and what does it do legally?
Well, right now, if you get a business license for the peddler activity, the code section requires that you also get the peddler permit through the city manager's office, and as part of that permit process, it is my understanding that a background check is performed.
On anybody who's gonna operate the truck.
If the classification is changed to mobile food unit, then that requirement to get the peddler permit would no longer be in force, and it's the peddler permit that contains the background check requirement. So that would go away as it's presently written.
Hey, anybody else?
Is that for the entire state, or is that? or
No,
for
that's
each-
just
but each
in our
locality can
jurisdiction.
determine-
Yeah, that's a local
That's
ordinance.
the ordinance that
So if
we brought
we,
today.
work through the planning piece, that can be shaped the way we want it.
Right.
That's not determined, it's just this fee and licensing that's gonna be,
Well, no, so the state is saying
State.
they only have to pay a license tax in the state or in this locality
well,
they
that's what I say,
choose,
the
yeah.
state's determining that part.
Right,
But all the regulations and of how they're to operate, still, we have control of that.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Jim?
So I'm kind of going back to this, Mark, and I'm reading this, so it says, as paid in which, any locality and registered in which property taxes are paid on the mobile food unit. So are you required to have, and I don't know, this might be a Phil question, but if you're registering this vehicle in Chesapeake, let's say, are you required to, then you pay all your personal property tax in Chesapeake, you do all that, and I assume you have a mailing address in Chesapeake then, correct?
Dana, do you have a perception on that? Because I don't really.
I mean, you have to have a place, right?
Yeah, it assumes there is a place. And if it refers to where the property is registered, then you would be correct. So if I'm associated with a restaurant and that mobile vending unit is taxed for property purposes at that restaurant, it would presume that it all.
But that's if it's attached to a restaurant, but if it is just a standalone food truck that is registered in Chesapeake, can somebody whose business address, because your business address is not gonna be the rolling food truck wherever it is, it's gonna be,
They
1, 2, 3
use
Main.
commissaries.
Okay, well then is it gonna be the address of the commissary?
I would presume that would be where they'd register it.
Well, I would imagine it's gonna be wherever they park the truck, it's gonna be their mailing address. So my question is, and I don't know the answer to this, but my question is if the truck is principally parked in one locality, then that's where it's supposed to be registered, right? I mean, that.
Well, that's the rule applicable to motor vehicles generally.
I would say that most of the trucks park at their commissary because they either don't want their truck in their driveway or they can't have their truck in
Right,
their
but
driveway.
so the truck is still a motor vehicle and it's registered
Right.
at some address with some owner.
Mhm.
Right, exactly. So I mean, so the question is if the vehicle is registered in Virginia Beach, then it would need to do this in Virginia Beach, but then would not have to do anything in Chesapeake or Portsmouth whenever they did that. So basically, all this does, based on what I'm reading, is if one locality has stricter ordinances, you could either move your business to that locality or a less strict locality and then operate in others, or it just means you don't have to follow the rules for 2 years in one of that. That's kind of what I'm reading here, but that's just, it's a little bit more confusing. I'd like to get, information from the commissioner or somebody on this, because I think it does kind of muddy the waters a little bit.
Yeah, John?
I think since the exemption is only for 2 years, I don't think a lot of people, unless you already have some kind of a shell company or works out of places where you have a conference room, you can use it for a mailing address, that probably a lot of people really aren't gonna, there is some cost to having a change from what you have. And knowing that it's only for 2 years, that's somewhat of a disincentive if it's any kind of cost barrier, but it is what it is, but it does go away in 2 years, and that's just something that people either have to get the General Assembly to say yes again, which they might, or they have to think in their minds that is the cost it takes me to avoid what I think I'm avoiding, that delta, worth the cost of getting the 2-year exemption. I don't know, but they're gonna do what they're gonna do, so I think we just have to act what's in our best interest, and then let the state law fall where it may. And I'm with Jim about the planning piece. That's, to me, more important in the long run than what might be the transitional difference in what rate you pay, because that's just a revenue gain. The other thing has consequences on your community as a whole, which I think is the bigger issue personally.
It's also a new business, too.
Yeah. Anybody else? All right, if I can, okay.
I agree with Jim. I would really like to couple all of this together rather than having it piecemealed. I mean, it's just, I found in my years of experience, Mr. Hanson, that it's not good to separate things out, and it's better to do everything at once. So I prefer to wait.
Okay, Sabrina.
Fine. And what is, since you've been working with the food truck owners, what is their consensus? What are they saying about this ordinance today? Is it better to piecemeal it or keep it all together?
I will say that in the nearly year that we've been working on them, they do feel that there is outside influence on how this process is going, and they feel that it is no longer trending in a way that is fair. Mm-hmm. That is their perception, and I don't say that because it's fact. I'm just speaking as when I talk to them, what they relay to me. It is very expensive for them to operate in the city, and the peddler permit is regressive, and I think this is a show of good faith that we would do something today on this. That's my personal opinion. I understand the perspective of wanting to do it all together. I respect that perspective, but I think it's incredibly unfair to say to a business that they have to background check themselves and then background check their employees when we don't require that of a restaurant. And it disenfranchises people. It really, truly does. I mean, I've talked to food trucks who said they've had to turn people away from gainful employment. And, you know, that's a big part of why I want us to move on this today. And all of their licenses are due March 1.
And can I just finish and say, I just want to finish and say, from what I have heard as it relates to their restaurant owners, that they don't have a problem with the ordinance part that you're talking about. That's what I was told, so.
David.
So, and again, what I'm hearing you say is this is simply taking them out of the peddler's license, putting them in their own ordinance, and treating them exactly as we treat the restaurants with regard to taxation. And then as far as the state goes, we would manage that through zoning and those types of permitting?
The state is basically saying if they get a license in Chesapeake, they can sell their trucks anywhere in the state of Virginia if they get a license in Chesapeake or in Norfolk or wherever.
On public streets?
Well, no, the locality manages the zoning portion of it.
So we would still manage that.
Correct, yes.
But the
But this
licenses
is-
are due March 1st.
Right, this now comes to, I think that this brings a question of, do we want the tax revenue? Because I'm telling you, well, we're not gonna get the tax revenue for their licenses, because mobile food trucks are mobile. They will move their business they will move their commissary to Chesapeake. I just texted one of them to see where their commissary is. I don't know, but they will. They'll register all their stuff in Chesapeake, which has probably the best,
And what makes
licenses.
Chesapeake best?
Because they have the least cost associated with it.
So their revenue, they're revenue-based?
I'm not sure if the revenue, I'm not sure what Chesapeake's specific one is, but they've told me that Chesapeake has the least they have the least restrictions. So, I think that this really comes down to, do we want them to be registering in our city, and do we want to move past the peddler's permit in this for this specific type of business? I mean, again, I think I think a lot of this is gonna be based on, do you think that background checks are a permissible job of the city to do for somebody who's selling food out of a van or a truck or whatever you want to call it?
Well, it depends on if they're in my neighborhood or if they're somewhere else.
They can't go into a neighborhood.
Well, I know, but when it comes to planning, if we get rid of the peddler's license and they no longer have to have background checks, and then something else happens and it passes and the planning passes and for some reason they are allowed into the neighborhoods, then we've just wiped away the fact that I don't know who's around my child in my neighborhood. So that's the part that, the slippery slope that scares me. I'm fine with the $40 or less than $30, or less than $3. I'm fine with changing that fee.
But they
I
can-
just get nervous that what's gonna happen later if we wipe away that requirement.
But they can go into a neighborhood right now if they have an event permit. Right now, they can do that. And so, and the ordinance that Bobby and I worked on would only let them in the neighborhood under that same circumstance.
Now they have to have background checks.
Well, let me address two things. One, every restaurant with an ABC license has to have background checks. So, and basically, felons or people with bad backgrounds can only work in the kitchen. They can't touch food because ABC feels if they're touching food, they're touching alcohol, and that does it. And I've had restaurateurs as recently as last night tell me that they've had to fire employees because ABC comes in and says, that guy's got to go. But what Shannon says is correct in the neighborhoods, because right now, under a special event permit, a food truck can come in, but they have background checked employees because of their classification. And I don't know if I'm okay with eliminating the background check if they're not going into neighborhoods, if they're not going on city property, not going on school property, but then that kind of goes back to the whole thing about the other piece, which is the planning and the regulation, and I think that's why I think it all needs to be done together rather than this, because when you read this, and I've just now read through it, it's only new businesses. So none of these existing food trucks, unless they want to dissolve their organizations and start over, are gonna go through the process of locating in another area and doing that. Otherwise, they're gonna still have to do it because they're existing businesses. But I think all this confusion, and I commend you for the work you've done, because I know it's very difficult, and I've talked to restaurateurs, food truck people, and just random other people at different events who all have different opinions on this, but I think it's confusing enough to the point where we could be making a mistake doing anything until we get all of this together, because, and I think that there's things that we can do to help them with fees and everything, but I think it's a very slippery slope if we start to reduce regulations, because it's really hard to put them back in if that's necessary. So, I mean, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting.
John?
Well, I think it's important to know how they define new business. This is very interesting. A new business means a business that locates for the first time to do business in a locality. So if you're doing business in Virginia Beach and then choose to do business in Chesapeake, you're in a new location, you're a new business. It goes on to say, though, to be a complete reading, a business shall not be deemed to be a new business based on a merger, so you can't join with someone else who's in Chesapeake, acquiring a business in Chesapeake or Norfolk, a similar business combination, so you had a restaurant maybe in Chesapeake, but your other stuff was here, a name change, or a change to its business form. But if you had a mobile truck and you actually moved its location to Chesapeake and you didn't meet any of the other conditions, you're a new business per the statute. But once again, I've often said, the amount of money involved here is small, and therefore we should be making our decision not on just fiscal policy, though we're trying to not hurt these people, we're charging too much, that's just equity and that's just good business. But to make the difference between 45 and 300 or this, that shouldn't be the basis of what we do. I do think charging people the amount of money, and I heard from the restaurants as well, that doesn't kind of make a lot of sense. And my personal view is like we're taking more than we should, but as to what the state law means and all that, to me, I think it's not consequential enough that it should be driving the decision we make on planning or make a decision on what we do with what's been proposed by Jessica and Bobby on just trying to make the tax policy. We got to manage the delta, But I do think it's the right thing to do for the right reasons and nothing to do with the state legislation, which they're gonna do what they're gonna do, and we have to do what we have to do.
Aaron?
I just caution everyone to look at from another perspective, where we are, the reputation we already have of being opening and welcoming a new business. And we have to be able to adapt on the fly. To me, I think this ordinance is a great start. We can always come back, making sure we have the planning, stronger regulation if need be. But again, if we don't say that we are willing to cooperate and show that we are investing in new forms of business here in our city, then this is going to continue to put up that wall that we are not open for business. Virginia Beach is not a place that's going to welcome small business. I think this is an opportunity for us to say, yes, go ahead with the ordinance, but again, like Jim said, making sure when it comes to planning, we actually think that out and through. This is just the first step. We have to take that first step if we want to continue to get rid of that reputation of being closed for business.
David, and then Rosemary.
I tend to agree. I think that I hear the phrase level playing field. Food trucks are operating in a similar manner as restaurants, and I think I don't see a way we can't treat them in the same fashion in terms of tax policy. I did have one question: did the Commissioner of Revenue have an opinion on this?
Yeah, I'll let you know that when in my statement.
And my understanding is we manage the other more difficult process through the zoning and planning. So I'm inclined to go forward based on what we hear tonight. So.
Rosemary?
Couple things. One, it's really hard to tighten things up once you've loosened them. It's harder to do that. But the other thing is, I think the food trucks, there's a lot of benefit to them, and I think about people who work in corporate office parks. There's no restaurants near them. The only way there's people, they bring their lunch, and very few of them have a coffee shop or anything in their buildings, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for that. I think there's opportunity really right here in our municipal center. I mean, people who work in this building have got to get in their car and drive someplace. I'm really hopeful that we can work through this. That's why I really want the planning thing to work, because I think there's a lot of needs out there. Athletic events where there could be a lot of kids playing. Would be great to have food trucks go up and, when they've been playing football or baseball or whatever, and everybody can go to the food truck and get what they want. So I'm really open to how we work with this. I just really have a problem with uncoupling these things until and I think there's still a lot of unanswered questions that we don't have.
Okay, anybody else at this point? If I can make a statement, we know we've been working on this for a while, and Restaurant Association was included. There was some disagreement about the level of and who was represented, but we preemptively went to the police department. We went preemptively to planning. We went to Parks and Rec. This is well thought out, and but once again, I think what happened, and I didn't have a chance to talk to Jess, especially in light of what happened in the Senate, but this does throw a whole bunch of ambiguity into the equation right now. Now, I did speak to the Commissioner of Revenue before, and he is willing to defer the payment by the food truck people for a set time if we can talk to. Is that a possibility?
Actually, no. However,
There you go, Dave.
the concept with the commissioner was that the March 1 date is set by state law, so
Yeah.
he can't really waive that date.
Yeah.
What he can sort of commit to doing, working with this body, is if the regulations change during the calendar year, to make people whole for whatever additional money they paid versus whatever the later regulation is.
Right.
So maybe having council authorize him to refund the delta between the two, provided we're dealing with the same calendar period.
Okay.
How would you refund the delta since the new system would be based off of gross revenue?
So if I pay $300
Right.
today, and then the new system is basically 20% of whatever, and let's say that gets you a tax liability of $150, the refund would be the $150.
Right, but when would the refund occur? Because that would effectively mean there'd have to be like an audit almost at the end of the tax period.
No, I think it will be when we codify the,
So what would happen is council would enact the tax policy, right, and they would authorize him to give the refunds for people that paid the $300. When you do a business registration based on gross receipts, you put what your proposed gross receipts are, and that's your tax liability. And so it would be at that point that he would gross up whatever the delta is.
My overall concern is that you're talking about what a food truck does in the city of Virginia Beach is maybe $10,000–$15,000 because they're doing business all throughout Tidewater and sometimes the entire state. So if a food truck makes $150,000 in a year, you know, they may have only done 10% of that business here, and then some of them have 4 or 5 trucks. So they're being told March 1 they got to put up, you know, anywhere from $300 to $1,200, and that is a big expense for a small business. Yeah. I respectfully disagree that there is any confusion with this ordinance. I think that it's pretty clear. They're still going to be subject to the same regulations they're subject to today. It's just that they're going to have to pay the commissioner a little bit less on March 1. And I understand that there's a lot of input on this issue, and I'm looking forward to the dialogue that we're going to have on the planning portion of all of this. But I think that we need to take this first step and do what's right by the small business owners that are in our city trying to work legally in the city and trying to be good citizens. And all they're asking right now, they're content with us having to work through the planning part of this and go back to the table and have all those hard conversations again. But I would just add that as far as the concern about the neighborhoods, they don't make money in a neighborhood. They can't make money. They need to get 100 plates sold when they go to a place in a 3 or 4 hour window. Cruising around the neighborhood with a bell on their car is not going to get them to 100 plates. And so, yes, I understand that fear. I've got 2 little kids myself, but it's not good business, and they're not doing that now. There's no food trucks in any neighborhoods right now unless you have a wedding in your house. So.
Okay, Louis.
I want to ask the city attorney, are there any what are the legal complications with passing this ordinance?
The legal complications. This ordinance does not, I mean, I'm not sure how to answer that question. What this ordinance does and doesn't do, I think you all have talked about pretty clearly. This ordinance creates a new category of business license tax. It changes the taxation rate from a flat $300 to the graduated rate based on gross revenues. It does not change where a food truck can operate. If you pass this ordinance, they'll be able to operate in the same places tomorrow they were today, no more, no less. It will eliminate the current practice of requiring a criminal records check, and that is probably, as far as I can determine, the single biggest difference between enacting this ordinance and not enacting it, other than the benefits of the tax rate for the small business.
Okay, so the issue really comes down to, do we want to do background checks on these people or not?
That is an issue, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, David?
And so based on what I'm hearing here is this tax rated, basically 150,000 is where it's the break even, is that what we're talking about? Right.
Yeah, but they're not doing 150,000 in
Right.
Virginia Beach.
Okay.
I asked the group as a whole, and nobody
So
has
it's gonna
done-
give, basically, if you're not doing 150, you're gonna get a good tax break, a little bit of a tax break.
An average truck does 150 to 200,000 a year in all localities.
Okay, and they're breaking down their business license per locality?
Yes,
They're having to get a business license in each locality?
yes. That's the point of the state bill.
Gotcha, okay. Okay.
Yeah, Aaron?
If the most contentious part is the background check, I think we should also think about how hard it is for those with felonies and misdemeanors to get a regular job in the workforce. I mean, this is a food truck combined, not even 20 feet. I mean, it's a mobile vehicle. And so when we talk about allowing them reintroduction into our communities, this is to me, I think this is a healthy choice to a start, because a lot of them aren't able to find employment because of, whether or not they just been released from prison or not, incarceration. So I think this is, not only is it healthy for those who just getting out of prison or jail, may have something on their record from maybe 10, 12 years ago. I think this is a great way to employ those who not necessarily will find easy employment, as well as making sure that we are constantly being open and investing in new ways of small business here and helping those small businesses grow. And this is the only thing we have to worry about. I think it would be becoming upon us to pass this ordinance.
Anybody else? Okay, so your recommendation is to, well, I guess we'll talk about it during, the agenda review. Okay, thank you for that good discussion, folks.
Picture time, Mayor.
Okay.
Council, we are continuing on next with our FY20 Resource Management Plan. That's the formal name for what we finally refer to as the budget. And today's capital improvement program that we're presenting, we actually have two of them. And first is stormwater, and to lead us out is the Director of Public Works, Mark Johnson.
Okay, Mayor Dyer, members of council, thank you for allowing us to be here to talk to you about the stormwater CIP. We've already talked about roads, we're talking stormwater, and right after this, we'll talk about coastal. We have a team approach today where I'm going to talk about stormwater program funding, FY18 and present, and then current stormwater CIP without any additional funding. Then Tony Alger, who gives you the quarterly brief, is going to talk about flood control projects. Melanie Coffey is going to talk to you about water regulatory projects. And then Mark Jones from Public Works Operations is going to talk to you about O&M capital projects. And then I'll come back up and talk about accomplishments. First, we want to talk about stormwater funding, and it's an overview, high level, from FY18 to present. It contains 4 basic elements or strategies or approaches. The goal of the CIP is to fund flood control projects, the big ones. It's to fund the annual operations and maintenance capital projects and to fund the mandated annual water quality requirements that we have. In addition, it supports sea level rise in the stormwater modeling effort that's nested up in the flood control portion of the CIP. Okay. Oh, let me just say, we've got new presentations on the table. I apologize for not speaking, telling you that. So please use the one that's on the table. And we, so I apologize, Ms. Henley. We were on chart 6. What this chart is in 17 and 18, we were talking about putting together a 15-year program, $300 million. This chart just shows you how we put that program together. We call it the Big 7. Windsor Woods, Princess Anne Plaza, the Lakes, Sherwood Lakes, Eastern Shore Drive, Asheville, and Central Resort. As you can see, at that point in time, and a lot of it was based on preliminary estimates, we had a total program cost for the Big 7 of $380 million. So we looked at the $300 million. We split the $300 million between flood control, water quality, and O&M. Flood control got $196 million of the $300 million. And it had a remaining balance to complete of the Big 7, $167 million. O&M and water quality got $104 million of the $300 million. If you look at this chart on 7, it just gives you a better breakdown so you can easily see what got, what groups got what. Again, flood control got $196 million, remaining balance $167 million. Water quality got $84 million through that 15-year period. O&M got $20 million. And you say, okay, there's only $20 million for O&M. If you go back and look, the previous fee increase went to a lot of O&M at the time. So we were kind of balancing the program out, devoting funds to surface water quality and flood control. So now let's update ourselves to this year, the FY20 CIP, taking a look at the Big 7. You can see Windsor Woods, the cost estimate has increased from $35 million to $152. Oh, excuse me. $152 million. And of that 152, we have $114 million beyond the 6-year program. Princess Anne Plaza, and most of that cost increase is going to, we have more complex, bigger pump stations. We've got more complex tide gates than what we originally anticipated, and we have more I'll call it pipe work in the out years, which hopefully we can bring down with more analysis, but that's out there also. Princess Anne Plaza went from 66 million to 172 million, of which 144 million is outside the 6-year program, and that is due mostly to the need to create such great volumes of storage pretty much at the Bow Creek Golf Course. The lakes, we did pretty good with that. That estimate stayed the same. Sherwood dropped down from 20 million down to 3 million. Eastern Shore Drive dropped down by about $10 million from 83 to 72 million. Asheville, estimated at 35 million. We were showing it at 12 million, and that's for phase 1. We're not even showing a balance to complete on that right now. Central Resort, which is essential, it stays at 113 million. We've got 5.2 million in the CIP to do the improved culvert work at 24th Street, and we have a balance to complete of 107 million. So,
Excuse me, Mrs. Henley?
No, go ahead. He said, and so.
Okay.
I was gonna wait until he finished.
Oh, I was just
You
gonna-
might answer my question.
quickly going to sum up. The big seven have grown from 380 million to 554 million, of which 407 million is outside the 6-year program.
Hey, Shannon?
I know there's probably some answer to this that's very scientific and technical, but how did we miss the boat on Windsor Woods and Princess Anne Plaza in our estimates? I mean, everything else was down or up a little bit, 10 million, but up 120 million and 111 million. How did we miss it so badly in our initial estimates?
At the time, we were doing really preliminary engineering and preliminary cost estimating. We did not estimate the size of the pump station and the gate, how we were going to structure that at that time. We were just not thinking big enough to meet the need. And I'll tell you, from my perspective, I was a project manager that built the big canal through Bow Creek Golf Course. I never envisioned having to create such a large stormwater storage facility that would encompass the entire golf course. So, and that is all earthwork, and earthwork just costs money. So as we get more into the design, we're going to try and drive it down. But basically, we had really preliminary estimates, and now as we got into the design phase, we've developed better estimates. We have a better understanding of how this whole system works.
And if I'm not mistaken, we've also factored in additional 1.5 and 3 feet of assumptions of seawater rise in the Lynn Haven, and that carried back into the Princess Anne Plaza and Windsor Woods projects too.
We have done that.
Affect every other project as well?
Well, we'll have to get, that's another presentation, but those tide gates, these two projects have tide gates at Thalia Creek and London Bridge Creek, and then we had to factor in 3 feet higher, assumptions of 3 feet higher in the Lynn Haven.
John?
So
And then Mrs. Henley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned 3 things. So what, is this 10% design, 15% design, or not even there, and this is just modeling, and then looking based on our modeling using just cost indexes relative to
The original estimates are where we are today.
where we are today?
Phil, where we are today with the P&E?
Okay, we finished the preliminary engineering report. We're now under design on a lot of the projects in the neighborhoods, the ones that we have funded for.
That's
Under budget. But we're about
15% or so.
Yeah.
15%.
Well, to tell you the truth, I'm surprised that some of the other ones didn't really grow, based on my own personal experience. When you're at 15% of design, so it kind of surprised me a little bit. And was really surprised that we held pretty firm and brought down the Eastern Shore drainage thing. I'm not going to bank that yet.
Okay.
But I hope you're right. But just being over there, it just seems to run counterintuitive, but I'll leave it to the engineers in there. And and this is all modeling too. We're using our modeling that we have.
We're doing, each project has analysis being performed.
Right. And I know I asked this once before, but I'm just saying, when will we be in a position, hopefully sometime in March, as we go out and talk to the public, or in April, and be able to show people for their neighborhood, pull the model up and show them the performance they get today for event X. And then when you have this in place, this is the same performance for that same event, so they can see what it means in reality to them. I think people are visual learners today, and I think we really need that to make the connection with the public. But thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, David?
Well, I think
Okay, Ms. Henley, I'm sorry.
Well, I think I keep asking this question over and over again. It seems to me that these big seven were pretty much formed because these were the places that flooded during Matthew. How do the places that didn't happen to flood in Matthew get into the program for improvements? I mean, are we assuming that just because you didn't flood in Matthew means that there's not a problem? I'm looking at the southern part of the city. That's my job. And I look at these, the spatial distribution of risk in the Dewberry report and that the focus areas, which I guess we call hotspots. And I see in the southern part of the city 3 areas that are hotspots, 5, 6, and 7. And actually, 5 probably is north of Asheville Park and Sherwood Lakes. That looks like it's probably Ocean Lakes and Lagomar and so forth. Well, if we've identified these other areas that also are potential for flooding, but they're not in these projects, how are we gonna deal with them? I mean, do they have to wait until they flood, or, we're only looking at the ones that had that experience with Matthew. We're not looking at other places that have now shown to be problematic, but they just got lucky and didn't have water in the houses at that particular storm.
So I'm going to take that on, Ms. Henley, because the teams have been working feverishly, and I'm extremely pleased to present this today so that you have an order of magnitude on the first part. We are addressing recurrent flooding today. We are not addressing sea level rise. A component of recurring flooding does have sea level rise in it. If you're connected on canal number 2 and you're on the plaza side of Rosemont, you're affected by the eastern branch of Lynn Haven and therefore sea level rise. If you're on the west side of Rosemont and you're in Windsor Woods, you're connected to Windsor Lake. Windsor Lake goes underneath 264 and ties into the western branch of the Lynn Haven, therefore you're affected by a tide. But we are talking about recurrent flooding. There is a whole nother briefing that we're not prepared to give you today to talk about sea level rise in those big muscle moves associated with how you affect all of the Lynn Haven, how we're going to affect Back Bay, Currituck, and the Albemarle, and the impacts that they are providing. What we're dealing with today is giving you better fidelity of what those recurrent flooding issues are that were way before, that have been on the deck. And we know there's a number 8 up there in the Little Creek area, but we've got a category where we've got those things in there. But what we're presenting to you today is the level of fidelity that we have in projects that we are actively working on, that we have sufficiency of modeling and enough commitment to go into our engineering phases to design solutions for the inside part. The externally affected sections of our city, beginning in the west by the Elizabeth River, in the north by the Lynn Haven, by the ocean front in the Atlantic, and that which the southern watershed is affected by the Currituck and the Albemarle Sound. We don't have, those are not on this board and will not be on this board for about another 90 days till we get through some more work associated with the Dewberry study. And so what's happening today is for you to understand the cost increases of projects that we know affect our internal neighborhoods, and then how much we can afford to move forward in tackling these numbers in our very next budget, the FY20 budget. And so what Mark's presenting you is a new level of fidelity. He is trying to keep it on that 15-year scheme that everybody is in our citizenry are used to hearing. And saying, wow, you know, I wish we could do it all in 3-5 years, but when you're looking at the true dollar amounts, we know it's got to take a certain number of years just to deliver the projects, much less to be able to afford to pay for those projects. So, Ms. Henley, you're asking me questions that are associated with the Dewberry study that are in the southern watershed, and quite frankly, we don't have all the fidelity to be able to respond to.
I guess maybe I shouldn't have mentioned Dewberry study, but I know that some of these other places had flooding in stormwater. I mean, I think there were houses that were flooded in Ocean Lakes, and I know there were houses that were flooded in the southern part of the city, and other properties with stormwater. But if you didn't happen to get in this listing of the top 7, it looks like it's eaten up all the money in the CIP, and there's not going to be any money for anything else. But I'll just kind of make that as my statement.
Well, Ms. Henley, we certainly don't have enough money to pay what's on the chart above my shoulder by any means, just in our CIP at this point. We will develop financial programs that will deliver that amount of financial ability over the period of time necessary to build it. But there's another category, and so I'm not discounting some of the areas that you're referring to, but I will refer to you that Ocean Lakes is the last to be affected of those circles that Dewberry presented, and they are in the timeline of affordability, in the timeline of engineering constructability. Ocean Lakes solution sets are not the front burner solution sets we've got to get to in the immediate. And so in all due time, we will address that. And so what Mark's going to show you is there's another category of flood control projects that they've been working on, because the numbers don't stop. They're not going to stop at the number that you see on this chart. Correct, Mark?
Correct.
So I would say, let's let Mark continue on these projects and let him get through the amount of fidelity that we have developed thus far, because I can't give you the entire 100% solution set, not yet.
Hey, David?
I guess I'm kind of astonished that Central Resort generates incredible tax revenue. Central Resort has ongoing projects. It's an opportunity zone that we just heard about. It has $113 million of projects. It's got the highest of the 7. Ms. Henley was talking about not even getting on the 7th list. This is on the 7th, and I see almost nothing spent on there, and maybe something is in the years out, but there's really nothing projected for that. Am I misunderstanding, even in the 15 years?
That's because we fought so hard a couple of years ago to fix the houses in Windsor Woods, Princess Anne Plaza, and the lakes that were affected by Matthew. And we pushed very, very hard for what money that we had, and we put it in those projects to make sure that these people were made whole and their problems are fixed. And so as a result, the Beach District did take a back seat to making sure that these areas were funded. So that's what happened.
I don't think this is a back seat. I think this isn't even in the car.
Well,
Well, I don't want to get into, we can go into a rationing thing. I just want to go back to the retreat, where we all agreed that the amount of money that's currently allocated and the current timeline was not sufficient. I think that was a consensus. And I think we all got around the idea, not this year, because we got to do some homework, but I think we all were unanimous that in November of 2020, with some homework and some good modeling and visuals to show, we're going to go out and ask the public and say, this is the best we can do with what we currently are kind of receiving. And if we want to move faster and do more and ambitious, which I think they're going to say yes, that's my personal opinion, it's going to take about $100 million every year for probably as far as you can see. But initially, we're going to look about the next 5 years and maybe something in the range of $450 million, which is about what Miami did. It's 1/4 of what Houston did, but it's going to require resources to do that. And I think what the city manager is trying to show us is that we weren't off at the retreat. And if you don't do that, you're looking longer. And the risk assessment, which the Dewberry report talked about, the $50 million of business risk. So I think this is very consistent with the discussion that we had at the retreat, and the challenge that we have to get the community on board as to, if they want to move faster, we can move faster to an extent, I think, but it's going to require additional resources, or we take the flooding risk. So I think that helps address, I think, part of your issue, but builds on the retreat. I think this is very timely.
Louis?
I agree with everything John just said, but I'd like to add one more point, and that is, until we can get through this and see what it all entails, why, you know, it's no point in arguing about it. What we need to know is what everything we're gonna have to spend, and then we can make a decision how we wanna fund it.
Right on target. And there are phases in every project. Every project of this magnitude has phases, and you're gonna see some addressing to your central
Okay,
beach
because
reserve.
it needs to.
So hang in there.
Okay.
Continuing on.
That's how it
Okay,
happened.
my main goal is to lay out where we are today, and then we can move forward, okay? Next chart. We're going to look at the entire stormwater program need. We're moving above the big seven. So you can see the big seven at $554 million. Remaining flood control total project cost of $204 million. That's where all the other flood control CIPs are nested. That's where Lake Bradbury / Lake Trub is at an estimated cost of $32 million. There's only $9 million in the proposed CIP with $23 million balance to complete. That's where Aragona is. That's where all the other flood control projects are. So that gives you a total, at what we know today, flood control cost of $759 million. It also gives you a total need of water quality of $10.1 million annually. That's to go towards our mandated responsibilities. In addition, operations and maintenance needs $34.8 million annually. Okay, so the bottom line, once you subtract what's in the proposed CIP, you have an additional need of $514 million for flood control, $1.5 million for water quality, and $18.6 million for operations and maintenance.
And those last two are per year, and the flood control are project-driven, and of course, debt service over a period of years necessary, 20 or 25 to pay for.
Okay.
Have anywhere the listing of that work that you just described? Okay.
Yes.
It's supposed to be in here somewhere, but I still don't find any other projects in this.
Okay, well,
city, but I'll just say that.
hopefully as we go through, Ms. Henley, we'll answer some of your questions, and then if not, we'll answer all your questions. Okay. All right. The next chart is FTE chart. Just a reminder, in FY18, when City Council approved the 2.5 cent fee increase per year for 5 years, in addition to providing funding to the CIP projects, it also provided funding for FTEs. The total number over the 6-year period was 36 FTEs. We got 13 FTEs in 18. We've already hired those people. In 20, we're due to get another 10 FTEs, 21, 11 FTEs, and then in 22, 2 more FTEs. And those FTEs cover the work that we're doing in water quality, operations and maintenance, and flood control project management, in addition to providing engineers in the engineering center to manage the sea level rise work, the stormwater modeling, and providing support to the planning department, development services center, when they have these big developments come in and they need support from a stormwater perspective.
Okay, Mr. Woodhouse.
So looking at all these FTEs, so you would need them through the 2025 of these projects, but would you still need this same quantity of FTEs after all these major projects are underway?
Yes, we're anticipating there'll be additional project need and additional need to address you know, the flood control and the work that the engineering center does.
Yeah, John?
And have you done a business case analysis looking at a long-term, 10-year with multi-year option contracts of buying these services contractually versus organically in-house, taking into account our high pension costs relative to the private sector?
We will do that and provide that to you, but let me remind everybody, there's $2 billion in projects not shown on these sheets for sea level rise. This is a 50-year fight that we are engaged in. We will go through multiple renditions of these engineers delivering $3 billion worth of project. This rivals Corps of Engineers' major infrastructure program anywhere else in the nation. And so we are engaged in the economic survival of our city, and those engineers, that expertise, that contract management, I will demonstrate for you that this is the way to go. But we are piecemealing it, and we're ramping up because we're bringing those designs online. We're going to the street, and with your support in the budget, moving this year and the year after and the year after and the year after and the year after, we're going to go to construction, and we're going to be moving a lot of dirt, pouring a lot of concrete, and digging out a whole bunch of new channels with floodgates and pump stations to pump it over the levee. So I would just tell you, we'll give you those numbers. But I'm trying to give you an order of magnitude today so you know what we're facing.
Okay, so now,
Yeah, you hit it twice.
sorry,
We're going to take that away from you.
please do. There you go, sorry. Oh, man. Okay, now let's focus on the current FY20 CIP without any additional funding. What it is made up of is a 1 cent real estate tax that goes to the CIP, 2.5 cent ERU per year for the next 4 years, and you'll see the distribution among flood control, O&M, and water quality. If you look all the way to the right, to your 6-year totals, in the 6-year program, flood control is going to get $130 million, O&M is going to get $97 million of the CIP, and water quality is going to get $51 million. So your total CIP for FY20 6-year program is $279 million. Okay, just wanted to show you this chart. Mainly just show you the difference between FY17 and FY18. That's when City Council made the vote and established the additional 2.5 cent rate for 5 years per year, and it generated $130 million. That is quite a bit. So it was a good thing. We're moving forward, but we need to move forward a little bit more. Now, I'll just give you a quick summary before we get into the projects. Can you move it, Mike? Okay. Just to remind you, it takes all three sub-programs to make the stormwater program move forward. That's operations and maintenance, flood control, and water quality. Mike, move to the next one. And here's the pie chart that shows you the distribution. Again, the majority is going to flood control at 46.6%, followed by operations and maintenance at 34.9%, and then water quality is 18%. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tony Alger. She's going to talk about flood control projects, and then Melanie's going to come up, and then Mark Jones.
Shannon?
One more question.
Yes, ma'am.
Of this 97.5 for operations and maintenance, how much are we backlogged on projects? Where does that fall in all those backlog projects?
Okay. I can get that number for you. It's more about maintenance cycles is what we're on, and it depends on what element we're talking about. I'll throw an example is our canal program. Last year we put in some seed money of $500,000 just to get it started. I don't think we're getting any money this year, but we're going to get another $500,000 next year. We estimate we need $2 million each year to get us on a good cycle. It's the same with the lakes. and it's each element. The best cycle we are on is maintaining our 15 stormwater pump stations, where we're maintaining one per year, or we're rehabbing one per year.
When are we gonna be caught up with all the backlog?
When are you gonna be caught up?
I believe that information is in the O and M section.
Yeah, it is, it is.
Okay, then I will wait.
Okay.
Just call me Barbara.
Okay, John Moss.
Well, we live at, I think I heard, we heard in the last budget cycle that we had a 12-year backlog, and I remember, I went back and pulled my emails on that discussion. We had a 12-year backlog,
Yes.
roughly $20 million, if we wanted to compress it and get that done faster. I think, she's kind of asking, that's a well-known, the public's heard that number, heard during the, is in this thing, is it still 12 years? Is it now 3 years? Is it 5 years? And to the point is, once we get it fixed, this gets back to the canals. I talked about the centering.
Yeah.
Are we changing, and rather than doing it on time, doing it on what I call condition-based maintenance? Meaning, hey, this canal is self-scouring and it's not getting sedimentation. This one over here just moves at the pace of a snail, and it has to have maybe a 3-year cycle, so you're doing it based on the condition versus time. And I think that's the heart of what I heard Shannon talking about, was a more dynamic, and I realize you might not have that
Yeah.
answer, but that's what I think our people want to know.
Yes, I think you're referring to the canal program that we talked about, where we need 20 million just to get it on a cycle.
Right.
And then it would be about $2 million a year to maintain a cycle. But yes, you're right. What we would end up doing is going out, measuring the sedimentation depths, looking at the drainage areas that serve the canals, because each land use has a different sedimentation rate or erosion rate, which will tell you which canals you really need to focus on. And there could be some that the velocities are right, everything is right, the banks, the cross-section, so you never have to get to that canal and re-dredge it again.
What I see here, I don't think you would conclude that we have eliminated that backlog in 3 years. It's something longer than that.
No, sir.
Okay, that's the question I'd like to know the answer to.
Right,
Okay.
we'll bring you a backlog analysis.
All right, Tony Alger, flood control.
Okay, good afternoon, Mayor and members of council. Today I'm going to go over, whoops, boy, this thing is sensitive. Okay. Oh, I hadn't, stay right there. Okay, so I'm going to start with the overview of the flood control section of the CIP. Then I'm going to go over the projects that are fully funded in the current CIP. And then go over the projects that are unfunded or partially funded in the CIP. I do want to say one thing that's new this year with the CIP. The big projects, Eastern Shore Drive, Windsor Woods, Princess Anne Plaza, and the lakes, we actually have pulled sub-projects out of those parent projects and created new CIPs. We did this so that we could better track these projects, schedule and budgets, and also, quite frankly, to be more transparent. We'll be able to, the public will be able to see how these projects are progressing. So you will notice a lot of new projects in the next slide. And one point I want to make, just to reiterate what Mark said, you're going to see a lot of projects, but there's not a lot of funding. You want to? Okay, so our program includes 58 projects. This is slide 1 of 2. On this slide, the projects that are shown in red are projects that are not fully funded in the 6-year CIP. There are 38 of those projects in red. Next one. This is the remaining project list. And as Mark had already mentioned in his presentation, all of these projects total $759 million. Go ahead. So the projects that are fully funded in the flood control section of the CIP are shown here, and there are 20 of those. I will go over the projects that are shown in red in a couple seconds. I do want to point out, I will be back in March to do my quarterly briefing, so the projects, the 10 projects that I go over then that are on this list, I'm not going to talk about those today unless you have a specific question. Go ahead. So, first project, Central Resort District 24th Street Culvert. This is a interim project that we pulled out of the Central Resort District. parent project. This will replace a 42-inch pipe that's currently located under 24th Street with a box culvert or a bridge. We are also investigating 2 other upstream culvert crossings with this project, and we have funded this with the $5.2 million in the current CIP. Eastern Shore Drive, Lynn Haven Colony Park Pump Station. This one has a total project cost of $10.9 million. It's a breakout project from the Eastern Shore Drive Drainage Project. This project will construct a stormwater pump station on the south side of Lynn Haven Colony Park, immediately adjacent to an existing city sanitary sewer pump station. We are showing this project fully funded in the current CIP. Princess Anne Plaza Little League Ball Fields relocation. This project is needed to address storage in Princess Anne Plaza. So our project will be relocating the ball fields and constructing stormwater storage at this site. We've been working closely with Parks and Recreation on this project. We estimate this project to cost $3.8 million, and we are funding this in the 6-year CIP. The schedule that you see on this slide is representative of the funding that we're showing if council funds the CIP. Go ahead. And the second half of the project, this is the actual ball field conversion. This project is estimated to cost $6.1 million, and this project is required to provide that stormwater storage that is so desperately needed in Princess Anne Plaza. Moving to Windsor Woods. This project, Windsor Woods, Thalia Creek Lake Trashmore Improvements. This is a breakout of the parent project of Windsor Woods. This project is for the design, acquisition, and construction of culverts between Lake Trashmore and Thalia Creek, and channel improvements along Thalia Creek between Lake Trashmore and Lake Windsor. This project will work in conjunction with the pump station project. This project is estimated to cost $5.1 million, and we are showing it fully funded in the 6-year CIP.
That's the one that drains to the western branch?
Yes. Yes, under 264. So now this table shows the projects in the current 6-year CIP that are unfunded or partially funded. These are the 20 projects that I showed you in the slide with the 58 projects. These are the ones that are unfunded or partially funded. The ones in bold are new projects in the CIP, and I'm not going to refer to the breakout projects from the parent projects as new projects since they were originally under the parent projects. I also want to point out that we have created 5 new programs in the CIP. These programs are programs that are related to the watersheds. So, for example, Atlantic Ocean Watershed Stormwater Projects, Little Creek Watershed Stormwater Projects, Lynn Haven River Watershed Stormwater Projects, and Miss Henley, Southern Rivers Watershed Stormwater Projects. This is a program that we've created to address projects that come out of the stormwater master planning. So the models that are identifying the deficiencies in the stormwater systems, we're creating a program now to address those deficiencies. So right now, we don't know what the projects are or how much they're going to cost. We want to put some, as we refer to, seed money in them to get them started. We do have an A&E under contract to do the stormwater master planning, so these projects will come out of that.
Hey, Ms. Henley.
And that shows 1.9 million a year. I mean, is that the ARP money that was reallocated?
No. This is a whole new program.
A whopping 1.9 million a year.
Well, until we identify the projects, this year, it's an estimate based on assets, and the Southern Watershed modeling also is not complete yet. It will be this year. So this year, like I said, we want to put some seed money on it to get it started, and when we get the results of the master plan, we will follow up with additional funding as needed for projects.
John Moss.
You use the terminology program versus projects in your, probably ought to be best for the slide and the language to match, but I'm trying to understand when we make the appropriation, are the projects that are being authorized for appropriations going to be delineated in the project description? Or is the project description going to be a vague, omnibus kind of description, and the projects that qualified are at the discretion of the departments to execute.
Well, it won't be at the discretion of the department. We will have a stormwater master plan that will identify the projects, and they will be prioritized accordingly. So it's going to have a benefit cost analysis associated with them.
Will the document that's being relied on be voted on and adopted by the city council?
Yes.
And the city manager says yes. Okay, that,
And what, I think what Tony's telling you is, we got these big grandiose things, and she's trying to get fidelity, and once she gets her arms around the project, she can delineate it by a standalone project, so we know what the start and end is, the cost associated, and those will be specified in your CIP.
I have no problem. Staff needs discovery money. That's what I would call it.
Yes.
But when we say we're going to do a project, I think that project should be authorized by this body in some document rather than staff.
Yes, and that's why I was calling it a program, because we don't know what the projects are
Very good.
yet.
Just making sure we're on the same line.
Okay. Okay, you can go to the next one. So this is the rest of the projects that are unfunded or partially funded, and the total of these is 38. Just to also point out, Mark had already said this earlier, the total unfunded amount of all of these projects is $514 million.
And it's almost all not in the southern, I mean, it's very little bit, 11 point something in the southern watersheds, there's 500 and some million except for Asheville 2. It's not much. Okay.
So the first project, Asheville Park Phase 2. This is the second half of the Asheville Park stormwater project. This project will pick up where Phase 1 left off by providing additional drainage improvements in the neighborhoods of Wilshire and Rainier. It will also include open channels for better connectivity between some of the existing ponds, and the potential to expand Pond 10A into the newly city-acquired Village D area.
This is what I want to talk about. All right. We did phase 1, and we did it with a lot of compromise, and I get it, you know, we needed to do that for the existing residents there. But this is going to, I mean, this neighborhood, which is getting all the money that's in the southern watersheds to run all of these projects, isn't even built yet. I mean, I can see, all right, we had to do phase 1 for the existing villages A and B. We swallowed real hard and did that compromise so they could go forward and build Village C. That's not built yet. And now we get this thing that they also are planning to build Village E, which we didn't even talk about last summer, but clearly this other $20 million is so they can continue building in this area that we know is a major problem. And that's what I have a major problem with. I mean, we're just building another $20 million so this development can continue to develop in an area that we know is extremely problematic. That corridor of Newbridge, from Sandbridge Road to Indian River Road, floods. And it floods with stormwater. It's not necessarily tide water there, especially the Indian River Road end. It's stormwater. And I have a lot of problem with committing all of our money for the next 6 years that's going in the southern watershed, except for that little bit that you've got for the southern canals, for an area that's not built yet when we know it's a problem. And we look at this, and it's another pumping shed, another pump station. Where do I see that? There.
It considers a potential southern outfall channel.
Another ag fall, another pump station. And that one that's there now is creating an awful lot of hate and discontent. I just cannot see us moving forward with this phase of this Asheville Park project. Like I say, I think when we get this additional storage that's being put in now with phase 1, that should take care of villages A and B pretty well. But daggone Village C and E, if that developer wants to build C and E, it ought to be on his dime, not the taxpayers. And I would really question whether they should put in that other pump station. I know that's not going to be popular, and I simply am not supporting this project.
Okay, Jim?
Going into
Follow up on,
CIP.
so, and I think Barbara, what she says has merit, and I guess the question is, do we have any obligation to do this based upon the action we took several months ago? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if that's a legal question based on what we did before, because this is a significant chunk of
This is $20 million.
the work down in the southern part of the city that could be
All
used.
of it.
I mean, if we're protecting vacant land, I think we need to focus on protecting occupied land first.
Shannon?
Am I correct that the Army Corps is supposed to be ruling relatively soon on whether or not they're even going to get the permits to build that next part? Is that correct?
No, we haven't started phase 2 at all.
No, I meant the further development. That hasn't
Oh.
been approved by the Army Corps for them to even do that yet, correct?
Well, it's, according to the letter that came from DEQ, which is all I've seen, I know maybe there's something from the Corps, but this DEQ letter said, I guess that they hadn't actually applied, but if they did, then there would be a public comment period and so forth. But that's okay, that's out there. But this is it going in our CIP this year, and apparently we're recommending to put in some money for this phase.
No, actually, it's not funded.
I know, but I thought I saw something that said.
It just says funding requested, so essentially the
funding
total project
requested.
cost.
I mean, I don't think we need to even move forward with this. For property, for these areas that are not developed yet. I mean, we've got these other places that are flooding, and maybe y'all are telling me it's not flooding or something, but I'm imagining it, I guess, because I hear an awful lot and see an awful lot that I know is stormwater flooding. And to explain to people why we're committing our measly little $20 million out of $700 million that we're getting in the southern part of the city, for this that's not built yet, I can't explain it.
Okay, can I just add, Councilman Wood, I believe the agreement that we have with the developer does not require us to do this work. Okay? It was our analysis that identified a phase 1 and phase 2. So all we're doing here today is we're just identifying a project. We are acknowledging it's above target, but we just want to keep it on the list.
Okay, so
Yes.
So,
this 1.7
with what we did on phase 1,
fiscal year
is
7,
that
it's not.
sufficient for the neighborhoods that are already built right there? for
To a
neighborhoods?
certain extent.
Okay.
To really do everything that needs to be done, we said there has to be a second outfall system.
Okay. So then, my second question is, if we choose to put this second phase off or not do it at all, how does that impact what the developer can do?
A developer can, if he wants to, our improvements phase 2, are not to provide stormwater management for his proposed development. So if he comes in and says, I want to develop this extra piece of property, he has to provide stormwater management for that development.
But he's gonna have to prove that his stormwater management is not gonna adversely affect
Correct.
the existing neighborhood.
He's going to have to come in with his design, we're going to review it, the planning department's going to review it, and we're going to make sure that it all works before we even say okay.
But am I proper to understand that if we don't do phase 2, that makes his stormwater management different in the long term?
It might, but he's still going to have to provide his own stormwater management.
No, I understand that, but theoretically, if we don't proceed with phase 2, he might have to do more.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
So let me mention the tables, because you'll see these on all of the slides. So the table, this particular table, when it says funding requested, and there isn't a line above it like you'll see in a couple slides where it says current program. If it just says funding requested, it hasn't been funded in our CIP, and that's the amount that's required to fund that project.
Ms. Emily?
But we're showing that we're doing this project within this 5-year CIP.
No.
I mean, with what you're requesting.
Well, it's just a request. It's not funded in our CIP. It's not partially funded. It's unfunded.
No, it's not
So it's one of the
anything in the current one.
it's what we would call requested above target project. we have the 58 projects I just showed you. There are many in those that aren't funded or partially funded.
That FY '20, so we're putting this in this year's CIP?
No.
No.
We're not.
So they're gonna show you $588 million worth of programming. I don't have $588 million worth of tax to lay on you all for your 20 budget to be able to do this. You're gonna crawl, walk, run. I mean, I'm gonna spring about 1.5 cents on you all for real estate to pay for stormwater, and I'm gonna add another cent associated with ERU. That won't make everybody at this table happy, but I will be able to defend that. The reality is, I'm gonna show you of the 588, how much a penny and a half real estate and 1 cent on your ERU as a tax increase to your citizens, how much against that 588 that's gonna provide you? So that you get an order of magnitude in 20, knowing that you got another 400 million after I get maybe 190 worth of projects added, or 180, what's my number? How much will it generate?
170.
All right, so I've given them a goal to try to raise about $170 million worth of additional projects on top of your 279 that you currently have in 1 year. And you're gonna see what the tax burden is on your citizenry to make that dent against that resource. And I just want you to know that resource has got all this with sea level rise underneath it. So we gotta understand how we're walking into this. We're not gonna fund all these projects. This project hasn't been scaled down. How many pipes do you have to fix over here in Rainier Village that exist that'll help them? Not improve the ability to develop anything else. So we'll scale down accordingly. If the council does not wish to pursue this because they have higher priorities, it's good to go. We'll move on and move another direction, and we won't put this into the project. So we're gonna get through all these unfunded. We're not making a determination who gets it, who doesn't, because there's no way we can fund it all, everybody. We're gonna be able to get that much of it, about 170 more millions, what your goal is in your next budget to add to the 279 or whatever you have on the table. And so you're headed towards 44 million worth. So it's gonna take a couple budget cycles and a whole lot more money to pay for this deal.
Anybody else?
Okay, Eastern Shore Drive, Lynn Haven Drive Pump Station. Now, with this table, we have partially funded this project, but it has a balance to complete of 7.4 million. The total project cost 13.7 million. This is a breakout project of the Eastern Shore Drive project. This will pump stormwater out of the upstream Cape Henry Canal before, during, and after moderate to severe rainfall events.
Where's that?
Yep, Jim.
Where's that specifically located? I can't tell from your map.
This is, let's see,
It's just upstream of the boat hotel.
yeah, the Lynn Haven Marina, just upstream of that.
So is that city-owned property?
No. The other thing I want to point out on these maps, the area that's delineated as the project area, it's just an area that encompasses the area we're working in. It does not represent any type of right-of-way acquisition.
I do believe we own this. I believe we own this strip right down through here, and we come right out here to that inlet.
I think the portion up at the top.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is behind the Marina Shore Shopping Center, is that what I'm?
Not Marina Shores, Lynn Haven Marina.
Right, but Lynn Haven Marina is behind Marina
This
Shore.
one's gone.
Yeah.
I understand, Marina Shore Shopping Center, though, is
Across the
shopping
street,
center
yeah.
right there, okay,
Right.
so it's.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's
I
that
see what
area
you're
in
saying.
between the two,
Yes.
okay. But then you'd still have to acquire property up north of that, then.
For the pump station. Yes. Okay. So this is one of the projects or programs, as I said, Little Creek Watershed Stormwater Projects. This program will be used to implement stormwater management improvement projects in the Little Creek watershed. We added some funding in FY '25, just 1.1 million. Right now, we're just estimating seed money, 1.1 per year. As I said, when we identify the projects, we will more refine the numbers and then develop CIP projects. The next one is with the Lynn Haven watershed. Same type of thing. The program will be used to implement projects within the Lynn Haven River watershed. Now, this has a larger project cost because we know that there are many deficiencies in the Lynn Haven watershed. That was the first watershed that was completed with the modeling. So that's where we're starting right now with the stormwater master planning, but we know that there's a great deal of assets in that area that need improving. The Princess Anne Plaza Golf Course conversion, breakout project of the parent project. This project's going to help relieve widespread flooding in the Princess Anne Plaza neighborhood. As you know, the neighborhood is severely lacking in storage. So this project will turn the golf course into a park with a lake and park amenities. We've been working with Parks and Rec closely through monthly workshops and meetings. This project is estimated to cost $83.6 million. We have partially funded it in the current CIP, but it has a balance to complete of 70.4. Now, part of that balance to complete is because this is going to be a 14-year project. There's so much excavation that has to occur. It's going to occur over several years. So the balance to complete beyond the 6 years is 57.2. But we would like to fund that in the outer years of the CIP.
David?
Is this Bow Creek?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes?
It's 14 years because we physically have to dig. That literally is going to take that long to dig. Is that what I'm understanding?
To dig and then to reconstruct it.
Okay. Wow. And there's no possible way that moves any faster.
I've asked them to look at accelerating it, and it didn't seem like it was possible. Just the sheer volume of truck traffic going through the neighborhood, yeah.
But just for the clarification, it's not the funding that is slowing this down.
No,
it's
it needs funding, yes, but this what I'm showing you now is based on schedule.
Gotcha.
What kind of soil's underneath there?
Do we know?
Sure, we're sampling it now to see if we can sell some of it off. You're exactly right. We're looking to see, could we sell it off? What could it be used for? Some of the material could be used for not for structural, but could be used for embankment fill in that along some VDOT projects. So we're trying to see how much value can we use it. We certainly don't want to haul it off and then just have to dispose of it. Some of it's also looking possible we could use it at Trash More too for cell closures. So we're looking at different probabilities or opportunities.
The cost that we're showing here, though, is the worst case scenario, not being able to benefit from the soil.
Rosemary?
So what are some of the amenities that you're looking at to incorporate with
They're
this?
looking at trails. They're looking at. You want to be more specific?
Sorry. We're looking at trails, we're looking at parks, we're looking at observation areas. Parks and Rec we're working hand in hand with Parks and Rec to look at lots of opportunities. Taking advantage of the clubhouse and using it for lease opportunities, maybe for even weddings, smaller weddings or that type of stuff. So Parks and Rec is really looking outside. We've consulted, or we've acquired a consultant to give us broader ideas also.
John?
In your geotechnical analysis, I hope you're looking, and I don't know, but you're doing some sensitivity analysis, because once you're in there digging, are you digging below and building in a maintenance reserve as you dig so that you know that you're going to have some fill rate to start with, so you're not turning around 5 years and you're building a margin? And are you, as part of your geotechnical analysis, looking at making sure for ground filtration of using like a clay liner to prevent, so you maintain your storage, so you don't lose storage to water filtration up?
Yes,
Okay.
we're gonna work with respect to groundwater, and we will probably overdig a little bit in anticipation of a erosion, sedimentation into the system.
Right, thank you very much.
from the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No, thank you.
That's crazy.
If I may, Tom asked me also to just point out, a pond like this, we build in many phases, so as storage becomes available, it would be used in the system. So it's not like we have to wait all 15 years before we could use any of the storage. We would phase it as we move along, and so more storage would become available as the phasing goes through.
Okay, Princess Anne Plaza, North London Bridge Creek Pump Station, again, breakout from the parent project. The Princess Anne Plaza neighborhood is tidally affected by London Bridge Creek, as you know. So this project is going to provide tidal protection on the north side of London Bridge Creek, and a separate phase of the project will provide protection on the south side of London Bridge Creek. That's a separate CIP project. I don't have that in the slide deck, but it is one of the projects that is unfunded. We are showing, this project is estimated to cost $54.4 million, and it's not funded in the current CIP. The schedule that is shown is anticipating funding.
And that's homes we have to acquire there to make that happen? Is it what I'm seeing in the little rectangle?
The rectangular, as I mentioned, it doesn't necessarily mean it's right-of-way impacts. It could be just area that is where we need to come through there with a pipe, not necessarily take the full homes. We're still in concept stage on this, so I can't specifically say that we're going to acquire the homes that you see where the red line is.
Okay, John?
This particular project caused a question to come to mind, but on those projects, city manager, where we are actually bringing the pumping station online during the CIP process, will the revenue streams that are identified with the rates you mentioned cover the operation and maintenance cost of the pumping stations that we actually construct in the earlier year? Like in 20, if we build a pumping station, maybe that doesn't happen, but when we do, will that be reflected in the revenue streams? Maybe not in this budget, but when the budget happens, we'll see that.
It'll have to, of course.
I know we don't have to see a CIP, we'll have an operating, and it will tell you when that omen cost comes online. We'll still see that, right? Yes. Very good, thank you very much. Thank
You want to go to the next one? And this is another one of the programs that is going to implement stormwater management improvement projects in the Southern Rivers watershed. And as Ms. Henley already pointed out, we're estimating it to cost $11.4 million, but until we get more refined numbers, we will adjust that cost. The lakes drainage improvements. This is the South London Bridge Creek channels and gate that I just mentioned. This is a breakout project from the lakes. This is the only breakout project that we have from the lakes parent project. And this project will provide tidal protection along the south end of London Bridge Creek. And it works in tandem with the North London Bridge Creek Pump Station Tide Gate and also the Princess Anne Plaza Golf Course conversion. This project is estimated to cost $15.1 million, and currently it's not funded in the 6-year CIP. Windsor Woods Pump Station, breakout from the parent project of Windsor Woods. This project will provide 5 large pumps to relieve flooding from intense rainfall events that occur during tidal events, such as nor'easters and hurricanes. The estimated total project cost is $33.1 million. We have funded approximately $6 million in the current CIP, but we are requesting another $27.1 million. I apologize, that should have had a BTC on it. So the project is, the schedule that is shown on the slide represents if we receive funding for the project. And the Windsor Woods Tide Gate. This project works in conjunction with the Windsor Woods Pump Station. The Tide Gate will stop tidal flooding from entering Windsor Woods neighborhood during light to moderate storm events. The estimated project cost is $6.7 million. The current program, we are funding $1.9 million, and we need an additional $4.8 million.
Rosemary?
So, I had mentioned at the retreat that I think for our citizens, it would be really helpful to put signage up where there's projects going on.
Okay.
To let them know what's happening, that we're just not moving dirt around, and maybe even put a link to a website where if they wanted to go to our website, they could find it easily.
Okay.
And see it more in detail. But I think, I've seen stuff being moved around and thinking, what is that,
Okay.
So.
Good idea.
QR code.
Yep, John?
You had mentioned, I think, light to moderate was the standard that you used, but I'm assuming that channel, and I've been out there, this is not asking to do something, but that the land that's being preserved on both sides is scalable, meaning that it would support leveeing up or building up as they built the dikes and the levees in New Orleans. They made them out of dirt and soil versus concrete, so they would be scalable and they could be maintained at a cheaper rate, a cheaper cost. So I assume that there's sufficient area there that if we were going along there and downstream, that's scalable to upgrade, correct?
Yes.
Right, thank you.
Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Melanie Coffey, who is going to talk about the Water Quality Regulatory Compliance CIP.
Attorney. Mayor Dyer, members of council, thank you. And I just wanted to also just kind of introduce our section. While I'm going to give the program overview, I'm also going to talk similarly to Tony, where I talk about the new projects and then the requested above target. But one thing just to point out even before I got started is just when Tony's presenting all these things on the different flood control projects, we do work together and look for opportunities that we can incorporate water quality improvements into those flood control projects as well. Just so you know, that's always on the table. We're always looking at that. We look at the cost effectiveness with incorporating those improvements and the feasibility. So just as those progress a little bit further along, we'll be able to tell more what the scope is and whether we can incorporate those things. So I just want to make sure I pointed that out at the beginning. So our program is focused on mandatory compliance with the city's stormwater permit, or the MS4 permit. And we have 7 CIP projects for a total of the $51.7 million in that 6-year program that was mentioned earlier. The majority of these are programmatic in nature, they have annual funding to continue their program activities to implement stormwater quality improvement projects, and those reduce stormwater pollution and meet our TMDL requirements. So we are introducing 3 new projects that have been identified during our recent project planning efforts. So what we're doing is not necessarily, they're kind of breakout projects, but basically we're moving them into the standalone project phase so that we can track them for schedule. These are the larger projects that people are more interested in. You've seen these before too, some of these. So the Bayville Lake project is the first one, and you're right, it doesn't want to work.
Just nod and
Okay, thank you. For the Bayville, it was presented last year under our Lynnhaven River watershed CIP, so we identified it there in the planning phase. And now the total project cost, we're estimating it to be about $4.3 million, so this would be a standalone project. And the project would upgrade the existing lake at Bayville Park, Offshore Drive, to provide additional pollutant reductions of about 75 pounds of phosphorus per year. So this lake discharges into Lake Joyce and then ultimately into the Chesapeake Bay. And the project would also support reductions in bacteria, which would meet our bacteria reduction requirements in the permit. Since it's at a park site, we've been coordinating with Parks and Rec, and it's a great opportunity for public education at this location as well. Thanks, Mike. Okay, the Lake Edward project was also introduced to council this past year, and it was in partnership with community preservation efforts. So the project will upgrade the existing lake in the neighborhood to provide additional pollutant reductions, similar to the Bayville one I just mentioned. This one would reduce about 90 pounds of phosphorus per year. And this is a larger project similar to the Kemps Lake project that we've presented on in the past. So this is an old borrow pit lake, so it's one of the deeper lakes. And it has a large untreated drainage area, so that's why we have the larger reductions. The project's being established in the CIP with proposed design start in 2025. The neighborhood is in support of the improvements. The adjacent property owners would be required to dedicate the easement because we would be doing shoreline work along the southern portion of the lake next to the townhomes. So usually when we do a benefit to them with the project, we ask them to dedicate, and that was something that we mentioned before. So we'll be working over these next few years with the residents to get some agreements on that dedication process. And then the lake discharges to the Elizabeth River and ultimately to the Chesapeake Bay as well. The Princess Anne project is adjacent to the Kempsville Plaza Shopping Center near the historic Kempsville area, and it takes advantage of property that was acquired during the Kempsville and Princess Anne intersection improvement project. So the property would provide space for a new stormwater facility. Parks and Rec is also proposing a canoe kayak launch at this location, and it's also a potential future sanitary sewer pump station site for an old station that's across the street. The potential layout of how these 3 uses could be accommodated on the site is shown in that layout on the right. So the yellow kind of squiggly area, that would be the canoe kayak launch. The kind of salmon-colored square would be the potential future pump station site, possibly. And then the blue would be some type of stormwater facility. The water quality project would provide pollutant reductions of about 13 pounds of phosphorus per year. And this would treat stormwater that currently doesn't have any treatment for that roadway and then also for the neighborhood going up towards like Caroline Farms. The project's also going to support reductions in bacteria. And again, it's a great site for public education. Whenever we can work with Parks and Rec, we think that's a great opportunity. That covers our new projects. And then I just wanted to cover our above target request. This CIP is funded at an average of about $1.5 million annually, and it funds our MS4 permit requirements for water quality monitoring, pollutant reductions by constructing stormwater projects. So this is where we do some of that project planning or construct the small projects. We also develop our action plans under here that are required as part of the permit. We entered into an agreement with HRSD for the SWIFT. I just wanted to remind y'all about that. I know we talk about that a lot, but it should trade nutrient credits for the Chesapeake Bay TMDL. But even though we have that huge cost avoidance, basically of about $315 million, which is good news for that program, we still have other pollutant reductions required with our local impairments. So we have a lot of local impairments, and I've just put some of the local impairments up there on the chart. The main ones that we have in our permit right now are phosphorus and bacteria, and those are not included in that Chesapeake Bay TMDL. So those programs, we've developed these action plans, and they're going to be implemented over the next 35 to 50 years. So this is a long-term program.
Can you share with us later, because, we are getting some benefit from the HRSD groundwater infusion thing, but also, where are we standing with relative to what is, and I'm sure you must have sites of measurement, so, like we go with our water building, can I tell you, so I'd like to see where we currently are, basis where they see our baseline from where we started, how much we've improved, and I'm sure we must understand the contribution that each of these improvements are making. And so, at some point, where are you at the point knee in the curve where you have to really look at the investment and what's the cheapest way to look at that? And I'd like to understand the science and methodology that you use to draw that analysis. And I never see the database of the actual scientific measurements. This is the dissolve auction we have to get to. This is where we're at. If we build this project, this is the contribution that it makes. And I don't know if we have sensors and measurement devices, and sensors, I continually say this, are cheap today. So I don't know to what extent we have sensors at these locations, or we're doing sampling remotely without having to use people, so we can get a better model, so that we know that we're, once again, putting the investment where we get the best yield. And I would just like to see how we're determining that.
Councilman Ross, if I may, most of these programs are federally mandated. They aren't based on any particular improvement. They're based on kind of a prescription of you will remove this amount. We do have monitoring, we can show you improvements, but it isn't a situation where once you get to a certain number, you get to stop.
I'm not suggesting that, but there could be a project where you could get the removal target in one project at a lower cost than doing several.
And they do that.
But I'm trying
That's
to
what their job
understand
is.
the methodology and how we make those determinations. I'm like the old school, trust but verify. I'm on the verify side.
Okay, so this above target request is basically needed for our next MS4 stormwater permit. They're 5-year cycles.
Could you do me a favor? I
Yes,
hate to
sir.
interrupt. We're at the point if we can try to expedite this. I know it's some very important information going on.
I'm gonna push coastal the next week.
Yeah, could we do that, Dave? I think that would be good.
Absolutely, and if I need to push finance, I'll do that too.
Yeah, let's plan on doing that.
I'm already
Okay.
firing off here.
Thank you.
I think we get through stormwater, it's pretty important to everybody. It's your number one priority, so.
No, I agree with this 100%, but we, yeah.
And it takes all three of these areas, cause you gotta listen to Mark's O&M, so.
Okay, thank you all.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so basically this above target request would be used to meet the new pollutant reductions that are going to be incorporated into our next permit.
Okay, Jim Wood?
And I don't know who can answer this, Mark or Tom or anybody. Where do water quality projects in private lakes that the city assists with fall in? And Tom, the one I'm thinking of is the Kings Grant Lakes, where they introduced the sterile carp, and it looks like, I mean, I drive by that every day. It looks like that duckweed is reducing, and I don't know,
Well,
if that's
again,
part of, if
because
that's part
it's,
of
yeah.
this, because it's water quality, I just, I don't know.
All right, you got
Yeah.
you got a healthier water body because it's not choked with the duckweed and everything. But the duckweed also does nutrient uptake, and it sucks up some of that phosphorus, so in theory, you do have some cleaner water that's discharging from the lake, so there's a balance there between the health of the lake. In theory, if the lake is healthier, it's digesting bacteria, and it's allowing phosphorus to attach to sediment and fall to the bottom. So
Right, I'm, the mechanics is not my question, it's financially, where does the lake management projects and the funding that the city does have set aside?
okay, we've got a program.
Where does that fit in all this, or is it in this?
It's in the operations and maintenance section of the
The section we're
CIP.
just getting ready to do?
Section we're getting ready to
Okay.
do, yes, sir, sorry. I was thinking too hard.
It's like way too detailed, thank you.
Okay, then lastly, just, it would also help prevent additional future impairments that might come about. So any future impairments that get developed will also be incorporated into later permits. So this is gonna go on basically forever and ever, this MS4 permit. And now I'd like to turn it over to Mark Jones, who's gonna handle that operations and maintenance portion. Beware of the clicker.
All right, good afternoon. For operations and maintenance, I'll provide a program overview, existing capital improvement programs, and the requested above targets and projects. And I'll expand a little on Ms. Kane's previous question related to maintenance and Mr. Moss's previous questions on cycle time, and I'll try and incorporate a little Ms. Henley's questions related to some of the maintenance projects as well. If there's any specific questions or if I missed anything as far as questions that weren't answered along the way, I'll try and answer them as best I can as we go. Yes, ma'am. And this slide just kind of shows an overview of the current 7 O&M capital improvement programs that are currently funded at approximately $16 million per the fiscal year budget. The first is the CIP 7055. There's an existing $2 million need for canal maintenance. This CIP was established in FY19 to maintain the 61 canals citywide, which are a crucial part of our stormwater infrastructure related to flood control and water quality. At the current funding level, the canal program is currently on a 98-year cycle. Would require $2 million a year to reach a desired 25-year cycle time. So FY20 and 21 are currently unfunded. So FY19 was funded at $500,000. FY20 and 21 were unfunded, and FY22 through 25 were funded at $500,000. Funding levels in the remaining out years are at $500K, which does not meet the minimum need for the desired 25-year cycle time. Under the current funding level, we'll be able to complete the outfall repairs to Canal Number 2, mandated by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and one canal, which we are currently permitting, which is the Lynn Haven Canal, which is currently permitting, and will go to construction with the funding you gave us this fiscal year. And that will marry with the Lynn Haven work that engineering is working on for the drainage improvements at Lynn Haven Canal. Lake Management CIP 7415. This CIP is used for lake dredging of associated, and this is the inland lakes, lake maintenance. Additional funding was added to this CIP in FY13. The previous funding increase reduced the dredging cycle time from 950 years to current 95 years. We've dredged 22 lakes thus far under this CIP. Utilizing the existing funding, Public Works maintains a prioritized list currently out to the year 2026 that includes the top 50 lakes required for dredging. A new CIP, which we discussed previously for the canal program that was established, does assist with maintaining and would continue to assist with maintaining the 95-year cycle time. We're also seeing more dam and outfall maintenance needs, which has a potential impact on current cycle times for lake dredging.
Did you say 950 years to 95
That's what it was
years?
originally, yes, ma'am. The original dredging cycle was 950 years.
Why even have a cycle if it's gonna be that long? Jeez.
Well, when the money was infused in FY13,
I
that's,
was just winging it when we put that number down.
950 years,
Yeah,
I'd
it
say
was
you are
over
winging it.
1,000. We just couldn't come to saying 1,000
I thought it
years.
was
so.
400.
but it's about 95 to 100 years now
John?
in the current cycle.
By measurements, and I assume we are measuring these two, do we know the degradation in the, even if we can't fix them, do we know the degradation in capacity versus when they were like new? Do we know the delta? Like when we dug out the ditches in Prince and Windsor Woods, there was like 4.5 feet of muck. So obviously, when those things were built and accepted, they had a standard. Do we know the degree of sedimentation and the loss capacity by lake?
Yes, generally, yeah, we go out and inspect them, and we'll do we'll call it a mud depth. We try to find the hard pan or the original bottom, and so we'll know how much sediment is in each of the lakes and the lost volume that we have. But we're just getting started, believe it or not, with this program. So the driver is 2 feet of depth of water. If the lake has 2 feet of depth of water, we know we got 3 feet of muck. We want to get it back down to a 5-foot depth, so the water body is functioning a whole lot better and healthier.
I'm not fault that you aren't doing the best you can with what you have. I'm just trying to, if you have a matrix table, I think every member of council would like to know in their district, if I have X.
Okay.
It's not a burrow pit that was used to build Independence Boulevard way back in the day when they're very deep. But if it's a lake, these places, and people would like to know that, because that helps us make the assessment of the risk when we're looking at the CIP. Is that a risk we're comfortable with?
We can give you a list of the lakes.
Super, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. We have, they're all assigned an asset ID in Hanson. We have a list of there's 461 lakes
That's good.
in the city of Virginia Beach.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Those are B&Ps, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Those are, sorry.
These are not lakes. These are.
We call them lakes, but they're stormwater management facilities.
Right, these are what were created when all of these neighborhoods were developed. To
Yes,
drain
ma'am.
those neighborhoods.
There's 461 of them approximately. Yes, ma'am.
And the reason was, back in the day, when all of these developments were being approved and they were being required to do BMPs, it was very well recognized by the council that there was this outstanding question of, well, who's gonna maintain them when it comes time to maintain them? So, calling them lakes makes them sound nice, but they are the BMPs that were put in with each neighborhood, which we still require neighborhoods to put in when they develop or whatever.
Yes, ma'am. We use a description lake to differentiate between what constitutes a lake, a ditch, and what constitutes a canal.
Do we have anything somewhere, do we have any natural lakes, really? Maybe.
I don't think so, no, ma'am.
Nothing's natural, so we just call them lakes to make it
the
sound.
ocean.
And of estuaries, and they're not natural lakes either.
They're BMPs, which are called big mud puddles.
Yes, ma'am.
That's good, I like it.
And we do complete surveys which restore it back to the natural invert elevation. So,
Rosemary?
yes, ma'am.
Are there things that the people that live around these lakes, or big mud puddles, as Barbara says, can do so they don't fill up with the muck as much? I mean, I know, I used to see this one guy used to take all of his leaves and rake them into the water, which is not a very good thing. So, I'm saying, is there like nice things for people, a list that we could send out to the people that live around these to?
Yes, ma'am, we do have a list. We work with Parks and Recreation. They have a no-mow program that go around the banks. It keeps the banks of the water bodies from eroding naturally. We've got education material from Melanie that encourages people not to throw their grass clippings and their leaves into the water body. So we can get that information out to lake management associations, homeowners associations. And
I think it's probably something to do regular, I mean, not every week, every month, but periodically to remind you,
Yes.
because I think, of course, people move in and out, and people forget, and
we don't mind reminding them.
Okay, next.
CIP 411 is the Oceanfront Stormwater Facilities Maintenance CIP. This CIP maintains the oceanfront flood control projects. This is the largest flood control project in the city, which we have a commitment to the Corps of Engineers to maintain its structures. Annual inspections of the Corps have noted issues requiring substantial maintenance by the city. On a positive note, the stair nosing replacements are currently in progress and nearly complete. I'm requesting $350,000 a year in addition to our current annual funding. CIP 7023, primary system infrastructure improvements. This CIP is utilized to supplement the activities of our in-house ditch crews via contracts to maintain 180 miles of off-road ditches in the city. This year, we're working in Zone A in the north and I in the south. FY 14 to 18 ditches have been completed with the exception of 2 FY 17 ditch projects. Currently, we're in a 12-year cycle, down from the original 16-year cycle, but not at the goal of an 8-year cycle. Requesting $2.2 million a year to achieve the 8-year cycle for our residential ditch program.
Yes.
So it is funding that you need to reduce that?
Yes, ma'am.
It's not manpower?
It's funding, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Well,
So you have-
funding
Buys
buys
manpower.
manpower, teams to go in and do the ditching, and some contracted labor that there's some ditch cleaning crews that go out with special equipment and rip down a road and help us out a little bit.
And as the director alluded to earlier, a lot of ditch work is earthwork, and which is very expensive. You know, to give you an example, we just opened up Dam Neck Ditch, all the way from Ocean Lakes out to the bog at Red Wing Lake next to Atlantic Shores. You know, that's about a 12-year periodicity, I think was the last time it was done. And so that was very expensive in order to complete that. So that's a large portion of your ditch budget in order to be able to complete that work. But it was necessary in order to be able to restore flow to that culvert along that section.
We got a permit, every bit of this work.
Right.
And that ain't easy either, to say the least.
I think people forget that.
Yeah. Great.
Yes, sir. Our first above target request is the 42nd Street Pump Station outfalls. CIP 7079 is a one-time $4 million request. Is proposed new CIP, which would provide one-time funding for FY 20 to make essential repairs to the 48-inch outfall pipes that discharge from the stormwater pump station. Pump station is currently in a modified operation, and the south middle pipe can only be operated during significant weather events and routine maintenance. A detailed inspection of the south metal pipe was completed in May 2018 and revealed the pipe is in critical need of repair. CIP 7082 is the next new program proposed by Operations for Maintenance for publicly owned BMPs. CIP is requested to maintain the 269 publicly owned BMPs per the city's MS4 permit requirement. There is currently no dedicated resources for this effort. Funding of $1.2 million per year would be required to maintain a desired 20-year cycle.
If we maintain, I'm trying to get back to this performance question I asked earlier, and I can see some people know I was gonna ask it. So if we maintain, because obviously these things aren't delivering the performance in terms of the stuff that they're removing from the water, as these things aren't being maintained. So if we maintain those things, what is getting back to the targets that we have to meet annually? Is maintenance a cheaper way than maybe some of these more capital-intensive projects, and what is the most cost-effective means of reduction? I know that's some science and analysis, but if reduction in the amount is what we're after, these things aren't doing their job, is what does proper maintenance deliver?
Right, these BMPs we're talking about are basically associated with city facilities, like a fire station would put in a dry detention, wetland, BMP. We know we have to go in every 3 to 5 years, maintain the vegetation, muck it out, get it back to its performance, things like that. Those are the types of BMPs
For example, Independence Boulevard has a bunch of those.
Yes, they
You're
do.
familiar. And you get heavy metals off brake linings, those are nasty stuff.
Right.
And I would think, and I've seen them come in there and scrape all the stuff out.
Yes.
Matter of fact, quite regularly, in fact.
Yes.
Because of how the fact the vegetation grows back. But I'm just asking in terms of looking at things. If we know the answer, that's great. But there's a science to all this stuff, and I'm just asking if we understand the science, and we've done the science, and we know this is, letting these things go is better than a backlog of this is better to have than building this capital projects, great, and you've done that analysis, you know, just share it. I'm just trying to understand, we build something to do something, right? And we know it's not doing what we wanted it to do. There's a degradation. Do we understand the degradation such that we find that acceptable, or it's cost effective, or not? That's all I'm trying to understand.
Most of these types of BMPs have a regular maintenance schedule that we should be on. The problem here is we're not on them.
Right, and we're losing.
Yes.
That's right.
I agree with you.
All right, thank you.
And I think your question is, do we get TMDL credits by pulling that muck out of that pond? And the answer is no, because it was calculated to contain that runoff, and that's why we had to build it to begin with.
Well, my question would be then, if I was the people doing the MS4 permit, I'd be degrading what you're taking out, because I'm supposed to get X from this, and I'm getting X minus Y due to the non-maintenance, and that would be reducing the credit I get.
Right, and the regulatory compliance tightening that has occurred over the last 5 years is exactly that. And we have had to take on manpower to measure, prescribe inspections on this, and now what Mark's telling you is, if Hanson doesn't get busy and fund me, I'm gonna get stuck with a regulatory non-NOV, because I'm not maintaining this.
That's what I'm trying to understand, the risk we're
Right.
taking. I'm all on board with the narrative, I'm just trying to
Yeah,
understand it.
and I'm helping for everybody else in the room to understand what this dialogue is, because I fully understand where you're going. This is not a negative take, this is just, we're getting hit, not just from flood control, but we're getting hit from the regulatory side as well as the infrastructure maintenance side, and this program is huge, and it's gonna grow.
Thank you very much.
The next proposed CIP is 7083 for cave-in repairs. This kind of answers your question, Ms. Kane. There's currently estimated 8-month backlog in this program. This proposed CIP is requested to address the estimated 8-month backlog in the citywide stormwater neighborhood cave-ins, to reduce the backlog to at least 2 months. The repairs directly contribute to increased stormwater system lifespan, conveyance, and flood control. The request is for $4.5 million one time for FY20 and FY21.
That's just one time? It's not a recurring every year, that's just these.
2 years, yes, ma'am. We think we can reduce the backlog and at least get it down to 2 months in 2 fiscal years.
That's to get us out of the backlog.
Out of the
Everybody else.
backlog, yes, ma'am.
Well, not totally. The backlog, we have an intake of about enough for 2 months.
Right.
Comes in every month. And we're maintaining with what our current staff that we have in place. So we're maintaining that 800 number. So what's coming in, we're handling the equivalent amount right now. Does that make sense?
But trying to reduce the total number.
Reduce the backlog that we can't attack and make progress on.
Makes sense. Not a good thing, but it makes sense. I got you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Next CIP 7087 is the next target requested by operations. It's a new CIP proposed to establish a enhanced neighborhood rehabilitation program to address comprehensive neighborhood rehabilitation of failing stormwater infrastructure in need of repair. The rehabilitation program is currently on a 90-year cycle. The goal is a 15-year cycle to address quicker response to neighborhood flooding due to failing infrastructure. Request is $8.5 million per year for FY20 and through the out years. Pinewood Road, culvert replacement. There's a one-time $1 million target request, CIP, proposed CIP 7088 for FY '20. It's the last new above target request requested by operations. This would provide one-time funding for FY '20 to make essential repairs to the roadway and culvert under Pinewood Road near Little Neck Creek. Multiple cave-ins have occurred at this section of Pinewood Road. Field investigation and analysis was conducted 28 July 2017 and recommended replacement of the culvert.
Yeah, Jess.
Just out of curiosity, if this culvert caves in to the point where traffic is impassable, how do we address that if we don't have the funding?
You have to close the road. It won't isolate any area. There are detour routes,
Okay.
but we would just have to close the road.
And that's, we would do it until,
Well, probably divert funding from something else, because you couldn't have the road permanently closed, so.
Yes, we would look at our operation CIP program. We'd find $1 million somewhere, and we'd
find a way to.
yeah, we would do it. That just means there's $1 million worth of something that would not get done this year. Is what it means.
Rosemary?
But to Jessica's point, if it gets that bad, it's gonna cost more, cause you gotta replace the road and the infrastructure under the road, and it's one of those pay me now or pay me later things.
Right, and it's going to be a pipe replacement is what this project's going to be.
Well, I guess what well, like Rosemary was saying, I mean, this feels like something we should be, I mean, I don't know, I mean, the addition of that, what if it goes out when somebody's on it?
Yes, we have it safed up.
Okay.
But we will make, depending on the outcome of the proposed CIP, we will make a call whether or not we need to move forward. And if we do, we will come see you about transferring funds. And we will tell you what we will not do.
Thank you.
And in summary, these are the discussed proposed above target requests with no funding within the 6-year CIP. The first 4 requested on the list are the above target requests within the existing capital improvement program. The remaining above target requests would be newly established CIPs with your funding approval. Thank you for your time. I will now turn over to the Director of Public Works to discuss our specific accomplishments.
Any work?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll quickly close out. The program is moving forward. Thank you, Mike. As you can see, we've completed 11 projects. I'm not going to go through them, but that just shows what we've completed this year. Next slide, Mike. Currently under construction, we've got Asheville Park Phase 1. If you drive down Indian Lakes Boulevard and look down the canals of Stratford Chase, you'll see a barge with a excavator on it. We're dredging over there. South Lake Holly Phase 3A is under construction. The 2 portions of the Sherwood Lakes improvements are under construction. South Lake Holly 4 is under construction. And we have a water quality improvement project over at Southern Boulevard Water Quality. Projects that are coming up: Aragona Drainage, Baker Road Culvert, Eastern Shore Drive Phase 1 is the Cape Henry Canal improvements, dredging of the Lynn Haven Woods and Windsor Oaks West Phase 3, and we've got a water quality project of Chatham Hall water quality improvements over in Kempsville. So we are keeping the program moving forward. We will continue to keep the program moving forward. So are there any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you all for a very in-depth and enlightening and challenging presentation. Okay, council comments, please. Anybody? Jess?
Very quick one, I think it was Sunday, might have been Sunday, if you read the Princeton Independent News, Senator Steph and I had the pleasure of addressing the American Legion presentation for the first responders, and it was pretty incredible. I didn't bring my notes to say what I wanted to say, but I did want to say that it was a really great experience, and I was glad to be there representing the city.
Okay, thank you. Shannon?
Mike, over at Lynn Haven Mall, they've partnered again with the city public schools and the military for the art of being a military child. They're having an event for the military school liaison officers at Lynn Haven Mall on Wednesday, April 13th, and he asked me to extend the invitation to all of you to come and be their guest. And so I have this, and I'll pass it around to you.
Okay. Rosemary?
This morning at the Development Authority was the first morning that the meeting was televised. So there's
That's great.
that, and then we've also implemented a public comment section in the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah, that's going to be great. John?
I'll defer to this one.
Oh, well, tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock at the Advanced Technology Center, we have the presentation on the first presentation on the forestry and flooding that Virginia Tech is doing for the city in cooperation with the Nature Conservancy and Lynn Haven River Now, the Forestry Department and so forth. I think it's going to be very informative. So 7 o'clock tomorrow evening at Advanced Technology Center.
John?
I just want to mention I had a discussion with the mayor, because I know the council wanted to provide budgetary guidance, and the budget will be submitted on March 26th, so the clock's running out on us. So I did ask him at our next meeting that maybe it start a little earlier, or at least provide sufficient time, so if we want to do that, we can all express ourselves and do that. Plus, I want to get back to the thing at the retreat. We talked about having some time set aside that we could each bring up topics that weren't strategic, but that were more tactical in nature, and that we'd have an opportunity to do that before the budget process got too far along.
I think that would be a, good idea, and we can schedule retreat time, and build that better bridge. I thought we had a good start at the retreat, and let's move it forward. Sabrina?
Yes, real quick, I want to remind everybody about Ignite Small Business Forum, Saturday from 8:30 to 2 o'clock p.m. And it's going to be at the ATC Center on Virginia Beach campus. Also, during our retreat, I talked about the resolution to increase the minority contract from 10 to 12%. And I just wanted to pass out the resolution for that. I've already passed it out to a few people, so I just want to pass it out to everybody, so everybody has it. Just noting that just talk with the council liaisons about supporting it, and also making sure that we include the Minority Business Council in it as well. And we're scheduled to meet with them at their executive board to make sure they have the information and see what their input would be as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, at this point, agenda review?
Yep. Okay, under ordinances, resolutions, item K1, which is American Flood Coalition, and item K2, which is food trucks. Both have speakers. Are there any other issues that anyone has with items 3 through 9?
I plan on voting no on number 8, and it's for the same reason I consistently do. We seem to each week incrementally going into the general fund balance. I don't think these are surprise issues. I don't know why we can't get a consolidated list and look to see whether or not there's offsets defined. We're just nickel dime to death on the general fund balance, and there's no comprehensive review of the decisions we're making. I object to that process. I'm voting no.
Okay. Anybody else on any of these items? Okay. Dave, did you have something?
So where is that? We're on
One and two are being placed.
Items K1 and 2 are going to be heard. Item L1, the only planning item, Clear Creek Holdings LLC.
I'm sorry.
Conditional change of zoning, R10 residential and I1 light industrial to conditional I1 light industrial for vacant parcel off South Bird Neck Road, 680 feet from Carissa Court, 3 buildings, industrial office warehouse, Beach District.
They'd like to defer it. The developer wants to talk more with the neighbors about.
Okay, so indefinite deferral?
Let's do 30 days.
Thank you, Dave, for trying to work that out. I do appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this point, the chair will entertain a motion to recess into closed session pursuant to the exemptions from the open meeting allowed by sections 2.2-3711A Code of Virginia as amended for the following purposes. Publicly held property. Discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for public purpose or the dispossession of publicly held property where the discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiation strategy of the public body pursuant to section 2.2, 3711A3 Beach District. Legal matters, consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by the public body retaining to specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to section 2.2, 37A7. Stanford Morris versus City of Virginia Beach. Personnel matters, discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body pursuant to section 2.2, 37A1, council appointments, council boards, commissions, committees, authorities, agencies, and appointees. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Ms. Finley? Mr. Moss?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Rouse?
Aye.
Mr. Nygaard?
Aye.
Ms. Wooten?
Aye.
Ms. Kane?
Aye.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye. Okay.